Chapter 845. Bang! With a muffled sound, Ji Tianqing dashed into the water pillar like a flash of light. He was already prepared. He condensed a shield of true origin to protect himself, and unleashed his strongest power to rush towards the hole in the sky above. However, the moment he rushed into the water pillar, he was hit by an incomparably powerful force. His true origin shield instantly collapsed as if it had been hit by an all-out attack from a soul-tempering stage powerhouse. He was paralyzed on the spot and could not use any strength. Not only could he not rush up, but he was also suppressed by the water pillar and fell down. Endless seawater wrapped around him as he fell from the sky and smashed into the sea below. There was no doubt that his first attempt had failed. However, after falling for dozens of miles, his body gradually regained consciousness, and he struggled to rush out of the water pillar. He returned to the sky with a pale face and panted heavily. He quickly adjusted his breathing to relieve the pain in his body. Fortunately, he had cultivated the ultimate sword body, and his physical defense was extremely strong. Otherwise, the terrifying impact of the water pillar would have crushed him into a meat patty on the spot. While he was silently adjusting his breathing, the sea level below continued to rise, swallowing the ancient city bit by bit. After half an hour, Ji Tianqing finished adjusting his breathing and returned to his peak state. He began his second attempt, rushing towards the water pillar with all his strength. In order to increase his chances of success, he even used the seal of mountains and rivers to protect himself. Bang! He dashed into the water pillar like a flash of light, and a loud muffled sound was heard. An unparalleled power fiercely hit the seal of mountains and rivers. Unfortunately, the seal of mountains and rivers had used up all its power and had only recovered 10%. Ji Tianqing only lasted for 2 breaths in the water pillar before he was suppressed and fell down. He had no choice but to rush out of the water pillar and return to the sky again. His second attempt also ended in failure. However, this time, he had the protection of the seal of mountains and rivers, so his body was not injured. The seal of mountains and rivers had used up all its power and became dim. He kept it in his interspatial ring. He frowned and thought for a moment, then took out the heaven-mending pearl from his interspatial ring. He held the resplendent heaven-mending orb in his hands and stared at it with a burning gaze. He could feel the mysterious power it contained, and his heart was filled with anticipation. Heaven-mending bead. Oh, heaven-mending bead! You are a divine item left behind by an ancient god, a supreme treasure that can mend the heavens. I hope you won't disappoint me and bring me out of this world. He muttered in a low voice, and then channeled his true essence into the heaven-mending pearl. Suddenly, the heaven-mending orb lit up with a dazzling white light, forming a circular light barrier. It was like a huge ball of light, enveloping him. Being in the white ball of light, he felt a lot more at ease. Once again, he rushed towards the water pillar. This was his third attempt. Boom! With a muffled sound, the white ball of light fiercely rushed into the towering water pillar. The water column contained an incomparably powerful suppressive force, and it immediately struck the white ball of light. However, the white ball of light only trembled a little before it dissolved the powerful impact. Then, Ji Tianqing burst out with all his strength and rushed up with all his might. The white ball of light continued to dissolve the water column's impact, and began to climb up, approaching the huge hole in the sky. Although the white ball of light was climbing at a slower speed, Ji Tianqing had undoubtedly succeeded. With the help of the heaven-mending orb, he was able to resist the terrifying suppressive force, and went against the flow of the towering water column. After 100 breaths of time, the white ball of light finally passed through the hole in the sky, and left the mysterious world. Whoosh! With a flash of white light, the ball of light crossed the invisible barrier between the two worlds, and returned to the profound sky world. Ji Tianqing was instantly overjoyed, and his heart was filled with excitement and joy. However, he did not dare to relax, and continued to burst out with power, rushing upwards. This was because the white ball of light was still in the huge whirlpool. The whirlpool exploded with a powerful suction force, and wanted to pull him down. He held the heaven-mending orb with both hands, and desperately poured in true essence to activate the power of the heaven-mending orb. The white light emitted by the heaven-mending orb became more and more dazzling, causing the white ball of light to become brighter and brighter, and its power to become more and more powerful. Finally, the white ball of light rushed out of the incomparably huge whirlpool, and returned to the azure sea. Only then did the terrifying pressure and suction force disappear, and Ji Tianxing finally heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly put the heaven-mending orb back into his spatial ring, and swam upwards like a fish. As if he did not know fatigue, he swam continuously for 2 hours, and then floated to the surface of the water. Splash! When he rushed out of the water, he brought with him a large splash of sparkling water. He finally returned to the sky, and felt a familiar aura, and saw a familiar scene. The water below him was the huge lake with a radius of 1,000 miles. Beside the lake was the grey wasteland, and there were 9 ancient stone statues. Without a doubt, he had successfully returned to the wasteland in the depths of the buried star sea. I'm finally back. Fortunately, I obtained the heaven-mending orb. All the life and death crises I experienced before were worth it. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky above the lake, and revealed a gratified smile as he muttered in a low voice. He looked at the sky, and estimated the time. Damn it, it's already the afternoon of the 4th day. I still have 1.5 days, and I have to rush back to Cloud Soul Palace immediately. His expression changed, and he hurriedly turned to leave, flying in the direction he came from. In order to rush back to Cloud Soul Palace as soon as possible, he did not hesitate to take out his sword embryo, and flew on his sword in the sky. Swish! He stepped on the golden sword, and like a golden stream of light, he streaked across the sky, and quickly left the lake. 6 hours later, he flew out of the mysterious wasteland, entered the vast forest, and flew toward the exit of the buried star sea. What he did not know was that after he left the mysterious wasteland, the 1,000-mile lake gradually disappeared. The area returned to its original state, and it became a grey wasteland. The 9 ancient stone statues that were scattered in the wasteland immediately disintegrated, and became dust that covered the ground. Night fell. Ji Tianxing sped across the forest like a golden meteor streaking across the night sky. It was extremely dazzling. Wherever he passed, countless demonic beasts and ancient mutated beasts were alarmed. Those ferocious demonic beasts and ancient mutated beasts all began to pursue him. However, ordinary demonic beasts could not catch up to him at all. Even those ancient mutated beasts in the soul-tempering realm were left far behind after chasing him for a few 100 miles. They had no choice but to give up the chase. The long night was over. When a new day arrived, and the sun rose, Ji Tianxing finally arrived at the exit of the buried star sea. Without hesitation, he passed through the clouds and left the forbidden land of death, and rushed back to Cloud Soul Palace with all his might. A few hours later, it was evening. Chapter 846. This tall and sturdy figure was the 3rd prince, Long Zitian. Ji Tianxing was like a meteor streaking across the sky, leaving in a carefree manner. He was covered in blood and his hair was disheveled as he fled the buried star sea in a sorry state. When he passed through the clouds and escaped the buried star sea, he immediately fell from the sky and smashed into a mountain peak. Plop! With a muffled sound, the 3rd prince fiercely fell on the mountain peak, creating a deep hole in the grass and splashing mud everywhere. However, he had already exhausted all of his true origin energy and strength. He did not care about his image and dignity as he lay in the deep hole, gasping for breath. The golden robe he was wearing was a magic treasure, but it had already become a pile of rags. His entire body was covered in wounds, all kinds of bloody holes and scars. There were more than 100 of them. Blood kept gushing out from his wounds, dyeing him a bloody man. With a pile of mud covering his body, he looked even more ridiculous. He had no choice. He had been chased by the dominating sky ape for an entire night, running for thousands of miles in the buried star sea for his life. In the end, he used all of his trump cards and methods and finally got rid of the dominating sky ape. To be able to escape with his life and not become the dominating sky ape supper was already very lucky for him. In addition, the 3rd prince had done something very dangerous, something that could even be called a suicide mission. After he got rid of the dominating sky ape, he rested for a few hours and recovered 60 to 70% of his strength. Then, he went to find the heaven-swallowing beast that he had been dreaming of. He did not expect that his luck would be so good. After searching for a few hours in the buried star sea, he actually found a heaven-swallowing beast. However, he found 3 heaven-swallowing beasts. A male, a female, and a cub. It was obvious that they were a family of 3. The 2 adult heaven-swallowing beasts were at the 4th or 5th level of the soul-refining realm. They were very violent and overbearing. The half-grown heaven-swallowing beast was only at the 5th or 6th level of the sky origin stage. With the third prince's strength, it was almost impossible to capture an adult heaven-swallowing beast. His target was the cub of the heaven-swallowing beast. He patiently followed and observed for a few hours, but he still could not find a chance to make a move. The two heaven-swallowing beasts had finished hunting with their cub and were about to return to their nest to rest. He could no longer suppress the impatience in his heart and attacked with all his might. Although he had successfully snatched the heaven-devouring beast's infant, he had also paid a heavy price for it. The two heaven-devouring beasts went berserk and attacked him with all their might, beating him until he covered his head and ran away like a rat, battered and exhausted. He fought with the two heaven-devouring beasts for 6 hours and was beaten black and blue all over, almost losing his life on the spot. In the end, he did not hesitate to use a forbidden secret technique and borrowed the power of the myriad goo origin to escape the encirclement of the two heaven-devouring beasts. After he escaped from the encirclement, he didn't dare to stay any longer and fled towards the exit of the buried star sea with all his might. The two heaven-devouring beasts fell into a berserk state, relentlessly pursuing him for an entire day. It was only when they were about to arrive at the exit of the buried star ocean that the two heaven-devouring beasts stopped their pursuit and were forced to retreat into the buried star ocean. After all, the buried star sea was enveloped by a mysterious power. Even the ancient mutated beasts in the soul refinement realm could not escape the burial star sea. Otherwise, they would die in the clouds and turn into dust. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. Silence reigned on the mountain peak. The third prince lay in the deep pit, panting for breath for 2 hours before he finally recovered some strength. He slowly struggled to get up and shook off the soil covering his body. He lowered his head to look at his bloody body and saw that it was covered with crisscrossing wounds. He then took out the myriad goo origin. He held the 5-colored altar in his left hand and made hand seals with his right hand, using a secret technique to heal his injuries. The 5-colored altar released countless strands of 5-colored spirit light that enveloped his body. Soon, the 5-colored spirit light healed the wounds all over his body, removing the blood and dirt from his body. His physical injuries were temporarily suppressed. He took out 2 elixirs and swallowed them, circulating his energy to refine the medicinal effects. Unknowingly, another 2 hours passed. He refined the medicinal effects and finally recovered 20% of his quintessential essence. He stared coldly at the 5-colored altar and saw that a miniature heaven-devouring beast was suppressed in the Dharma treasure space of the altar. That heaven-devouring beast was in a coma. Its entire body was wrapped in 5-colored spirit light and surrounded by countless strands of blood-red light, looking very evil. Ha ha ha! I finally got the heaven-devouring beast. After I use the divine venomous goo to catalyze it to grow up, it will be a great killing weapon in my hands. At that time, I will be able to carry out my grand plan and get rid of that damned Long Yunxiao. I will use all my strength to deal with Cloud Spirit Palace. The corners of the third prince's mouth twitched, revealing a sinister sneer. And that damned Ji Tianxing, that despicable little bastard. I will remember this enmity and will never forget it for the rest of my life. After I return to Middle Ground to recuperate, I will tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes. Thinking of Ji Tianxing, he gnashed his teeth in hatred. His eyes were filled with a cold light, and his body emitted an extremely strong killing intent. A day passed, and it was late at night. Cloud Spirit Palace was brightly lit and as quiet as ever. In the depths of the palace, 2 people were talking in a luxurious secret room. These 2 people were Xueqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey. Other than the 2 of them, there was another person in the secret room. It was Ji Chongkong. Ji Chongkong lay motionless on the ice jade bed like a corpse. His body was cold and stiff, and his vitality was extremely weak. At this moment, he had reached the end of his life. His soul energy was extremely weak, like a candle that was about to be extinguished. Xueqi looked at Ji Chongkong with a grave expression. His heart was heavy, and he sighed bitterly. Say, the 5-day deadline is almost up. There are only 2 more hours before his soul dissipates. Miracle Dr. Bailey also looked at Ji Chongkong. His expression was as heavy as his heart. It was filled with worry and reluctance. I have already done my best. For the past 5 days, I have continuously used a secret technique to maintain his physical body's vitality and soul energy. It's a pity that my abilities are limited and I can no longer extend his life. Sigh. Miracle Dr. Bailey also sighed heavily. Yun Zhongqi shook his head gently and said in a heavy tone, "Perhaps this is fate. If he dies just like this, I don't know how sad Tianqing will be when he hears the news." Miracle Dr. Bailey said with a heart full of worry, "Things are already set in stone. I'm afraid there's no turning back. Right now, I'm only worried about Tianqing. I hope that he can return safely and at least see his father one last time. As for the heaven-mending pearl, it's just an illusory legend. How can we take it seriously?" Yun Zhongqi nodded and said in a serious tone, "Father-in-law, don't worry. If Tianqing doesn't return by tomorrow, I will personally go to the buried Star Sea to find him. His father is about to pass away. I can't let anything happen to him." Miracle Dr. Bailey was about to reply. At this moment, the door of the secret room suddenly lit up and slowly opened. Chapter 847. Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Li turned their heads to look at the door of the secret chamber. When the two of them saw the figure clearly, they immediately revealed a look of surprise and disbelief. "Tianqing? You're finally back. Tianqing, it's great that you're back safely." As they spoke, the two of them hurriedly went to welcome him. Without a doubt, this travel-worn and somewhat battered figure was Tianqing. Ever since he left the buried Star Sea, he had been flying on his sword, rushing back to Cloud Soul Palace as fast as he could. He had flown for nearly 16 hours without stopping. He did not even have time to catch his breath. Fortunately, he had made it back to Cloud Soul Palace before midnight. However, he had used up almost all of his true origin and was about to collapse. At this moment, his white robe was a little dirty, his face was pale, and his hair was disheveled. He gasped for breath as he staggered into the secret chamber. His eyes were fixed on the ice jade bed in the corner. "Uncle Master, how is my father?" He did not have time to bow to Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Li. He only greeted them and walked to the corner of the secret chamber to check on his father's condition. Yun Zhongqi saw that he was extremely weak and that he was staggering and trembling. He quickly reached out to support him. "Tianqing, don't worry. Your father is fine for now." Hearing this, Tianqing finally heaved a sigh of relief. He looked relieved. "It's good that he's fine. At least I'm not late." Bailey Li nodded with a gratified expression. He stroked his beard and said, "We're relieved that you're back safely." Yun Zhongqi also felt the same. He quickly said to Tianqing, "Tianqing, rest for a while. Uncle has something to say to you." His tone was heavy. It was obvious that what he wanted to say was related to Chongkong. There were only 2 hours left. Tianqing was about to die. He wanted to advise Tianqing to be mentally prepared. However, Tianqing had no intention of resting. He said anxiously, "Uncle, let's talk later. 5 days are almost up, and there are only 2 hours left. I have to save my father first." As he spoke, he took out the heaven-mending pearl from his spatial ring and held it in his palms. Yun Zhongqi and Divine Dr. Bailey were both stunned. They frowned and looked at him, sizing up the heaven-mending orb. "Tianqing, what is this?" Tianqing quickly replied, "This is the heaven-mending bead." "What? How is this possible?" Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey were stunned. Their eyes widened in shock as they stared at Tianqing in disbelief. The two of them were stunned as they stared at the heaven-mending orb. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. This fist-sized white jade bead was sparkling and translucent. Its surface was covered with veined patterns that resembled mountains and rivers. It looked very ancient and mysterious. The white jade bead glowed with a dense white light and emanated a powerful mysterious power, as if it had the power to engulf the entire world. The two of them couldn't believe that this white jade bead was the legendary heaven-mending orb. From the beginning, the two of them treated the heaven-mending orb as an illusory ancient legend. They never thought that Tianqing would be able to obtain it. Therefore, when they saw that Tianqing had returned, the two of them didn't mention the heaven-mending orb, nor did they ask if he had found it. Because, in their eyes, the heaven-mending orb was a legendary divine object. Whether or not it really existed was unknown. How could it be easily found? But now, Tianqing really took out a mysterious and powerful ancient jade bead and told them that this was the heaven-mending orb. How could they not be shocked? How could they not feel shocked? "Tianqing, you actually found the heaven-mending orb? This is the legendary heaven-mending orb?" Tianqing, how did you find it? And where did you find it? Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey were filled with excitement and curiosity as they looked at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, Uncle Master, time is of the essence. Use the heaven-mending orb to heal my father first. I will explain this matter to you later. Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey immediately reacted. They revealed an awkward expression and smiled embarrassedly. Cough cough. We lost our composure. Tianqing, you are right. Saving people is more important. We can talk about other things later. Therefore, Miracle Dr. Bailey quickly calmed himself down and took the heaven-mending orb. He walked to the side of the ice jade bed and began to heal Ji Changkong. He held the heaven-mending orb in his left hand and formed a mysterious seal with his right hand. He used an ancient secret technique to activate the heaven-mending orb's power. Immediately, the heaven-mending orb released 9 finger-thick gentle white lights and entered Ji Changkong's body. Soon, Ji Changkong was enveloped by the gentle white light. He slowly floated up and hovered above the ice jade bed. The white light contained a mysterious and powerful energy. After entering his body, it gathered in his mind and wrapped around his 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. It began to slowly repair and heal him. This process was extremely slow and hidden. It could not be seen with the naked eye or spiritual sense. Only a spirit refinement realm expert could observe the changes in Ji Changkong's soul using the power of their soul. The secret room was silent. Miracle Dr. Bailey was focused on using the secret technique of the heaven-mending orb to repair Ji Changkong's soul and spiritual energy. Yun Zhongqi stood at the side and watched Ji Changkong's changes with concern. If Miracle Dr. Bailey could not hold on or needed any help, he would lend a hand. Ji Tianqing could only watch silently. He could not help at all. He could only pray for his father in his heart. Unknowingly, 8 hours had passed and the sky outside was already bright. Miracle Dr. Bailey had continuously used the technique for half the night and consumed a huge amount of spiritual energy. His soul was also very tired. At this time, he finally stopped and slowly withdrew his right hand. He smiled and stroked his beard. He turned to Ji Tianqing and said with a gratified tone, Tianqing, your father's life is finally saved. You can rest assured. This heaven-mending orb is indeed a legendary divine item. It is more mysterious and powerful than any magic treasure I have seen. As he spoke, he returned the heaven-mending orb to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing took the heaven-mending orb and quickly looked at his father, Ji Changkong. He saw that Ji Changkong was still unconscious and lying motionlessly on the ice jade bed. His physical body had recovered its vitality and was wrapped in a dense white light. His skin was also faintly glowing. He was no different from a normal martial artist. His 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls had also gathered and his spiritual energy was gradually stabilizing. Although his aura was still very weak, at least his condition was stable. It was just like a normal martial artist who was seriously injured. Even with a divine item like the heaven-mending orb, it was impossible to cure him in a day. Next, Miracle Dr. Bailey still had to use the heaven-mending orb every day to treat his injuries. Chapter 848. With Ji Tianqing's injuries stabilized, Ji Tianqing felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Miracle Dr. Bailey had used up too much of his magic power and his soul was also a little tired. He needed to return to his residence to recuperate. After he left the secret chamber, Yun Zhongqi reminded Ji Tianqing, Tianqing, you must be exhausted these past few days. You must have experienced many dangers. You should also quickly go and rest. Your father's condition has stabilized and there won't be any more changes. Ji Tianqing nodded. Uncle, I will meditate in this secret chamber. It will also be convenient for me to take care of my father. You still have a lot of things to take care of, so you should go do them first. The two of them chatted for a while before Yun Zhongqi left the secret chamber to take care of Cloud Soul Palace's affairs. Ji Tianqing walked to the spirit liquid pool in the corner of the secret chamber and sat in it. He began to meditate and recover his true essence. A day passed quickly. Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey only returned to the secret chamber in the middle of the night. Ji Tianqing had already finished his cultivation. His true essence had mostly recovered and his mental state was much better. He was no longer as tired as before. Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey had been holding back their doubts and curiosity for an entire day. After seeing Ji Tianqing, The two of them asked him what had happened in the past few days and how he had found the heaven-mending pearl. Thus, Ji Tianqing told the two of them everything he had seen and heard after entering the buried star sea. Of course, he did not mention the burial of heaven and the open heaven door. He vaguely glossed over it. Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey also understood that Ji Tianqing definitely had his secrets, so they did not probe further. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing finished talking about his experiences in the buried star sea. Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey were filled with excitement and shock. Their eyes were filled with yearning. I really did not expect that the legendary buried star sea not only had many powerful ancient beasts, but also a mysterious world passage. I thought I had traveled across the Tianxian land and had a good understanding of all the mysterious places in the world. I didn't expect such an incredible thing to happen. The ground under our feet is the sky for others. Tianqing, these words of yours are simply the truth of the great Tao. They contain boundless mysteries that are worthy of us cultivators to spend our entire lives exploring. Yun Zhongqi's heart surged and he couldn't help but exclaim. He had gained a new understanding of the profound sky world. Miracle Dr. Bailey was also shocked. He stroked his white beard and asked doubtfully, "This is unbelievable. What kind of place was that mysterious wasteland?" When I was looking through the information, I also saw someone mention that wasteland. However, according to the information recorded in the history books, only a very small number of people had seen the wasteland. No one knew the secret of that wasteland. Only you, Tianqing, were able to unravel the secret and make such an important discovery. If this matter were to be made public, the entire Tianxian land would be shaken. This was definitely a shocking secret that would shock the martial arts world. Furthermore, the heaven-mending pearl from the ancient legends actually existed. Doesn't this mean that those immortals from the ancient legends also once existed on the Tianxian land? Of course, Ji Tianqing also understood how shocking the open heaven door and the world passage were. However, he would keep this a secret and only let those closest to him and those he trusted know about it. After a long while, when Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey had calmed down, he said with a serious expression, "Uncle Master, the secret in the depths of the buried star sea proves that the ancient legends are true. In the ancient Tianxian land, there were indeed many immortals. However, why did the immortals disappear after the end of the ancient era and disappear from this world? Where did those powerful immortals from the ancient legends go? Are they still alive? In the past 1,000 years, only Kenshin had surpassed the primordial soul realm and passed the heavenly tribulation to become an immortal. Currently, in the Tianxian land, the primordial soul realm was the strongest, and there were only 2 or 3 of them. Why was no one able to pass the heavenly tribulation and touch the legendary immortal realm? There must be some earth-shattering secret hidden in this. If we can uncover it, perhaps we will have the opportunity to learn about the immortal realm of the martial way?" After listening to Ji Tianqing's words, Yun Zhongqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey nodded in agreement. "That's right, Tianqing. You are absolutely right. Many strong people have thought about these questions and even investigated them, but no one knows the answer. If we can uncover the answer, we will definitely be able to change the martial way of the Tianxian land and even touch the immortal realm above the heavenly tribulation." Yun Zhongqi was one of the strongest people in the continent. He had a high status and great power. Therefore, his vision was no longer limited to the human race in the middle state, but the entire Tianxian land. If there was a chance to uncover the ancient secrets and understand the truth behind the disappearance of the immortals, he would do everything he could to find out the truth, even if it meant sacrificing his life. This was his goal as a strong person. Miracle Dr. Bailey frowned and thought for a while. Then he said in a serious tone, "Tianqing, I have been troubled by these questions for a long time. Therefore, for the past 100 years, I have been traveling the world to find out the secrets of the Tianxian land. I want to uncover the truth behind the disappearance of the immortals and the heavenly tribulation. Although we are only at the soul-tempering realm now and are far from the heavenly tribulation and the immortal realm, this secret seems to have nothing to do with us. However, every martial artist who is unwilling to be mediocre must have great ambitions and work hard to reach the peak of the martial way. Only then can they have a chance to touch the immortal realm. I am old and have traveled the continent for more than 100 years. But I have not found any useful clues. Perhaps, when you reach the soul-tempering realm and have the ability to travel the world and explore the ancient ruins, you will have a chance to uncover the truth. I have high hopes for you. I believe that you will be able to do what we can't." Yun Zhongqi nodded in agreement and looked at Ji Tianqing eagerly. Ji Tianqing looked at the two of them and said with a smile, "Uncle Master, It is still too early for us to discuss these things. We can hide this secret in our hearts. In the future, we will have a chance to uncover it. As for now, let's take care of the matter at hand. Xueqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey nodded with a smile and stopped discussing the ancient legends and secrets. Ji Tianqing remembered something and said with a serious expression, "This time, I almost had a life-and-death battle with the third prince in the buried Star Sea. This guy is sinister and despicable. He has the Gu Dao divine weapon, the origin of all Gu. He can release strange and powerful divine venomous worms. Duanmu Huang and the head of the Mu Rong family had their lives controlled by his divine venomous worms. That was why they were forced to listen to him. Now that he has reached the Soul Tempering Realm, he will definitely make a move to get rid of me and Cloud Soul Palace. All three of us are targets that he wants to eliminate. Next, we must make preparations and take precautions as soon as possible to deal with his schemes." Chapter 849. Ji Tianqing's solemn reminder made Xueqi and Miracle Dr. Bailey alert. Xueqi had already made preparations to prevent the Murong family and the third prince from taking revenge. However, Ji Tianqing mentioned the origin of all poisonous insects and the mysterious divine venomous insect, which made him even more cautious. He would not follow in the footsteps of the Duanmu Huang and the Murong family. He would not let the third prince have the chance to plant the divine venomous insect on him. Although the origin of all poisonous insects was very powerful and the divine venomous insect was strange and unpredictable. However, planting the divine venomous insect required meticulous planning and a lot of time and methods. As long as Xueqi was careful enough and did not give the third prince a chance, he would not fall for it. After an hour, the three of them finished discussing the third prince's matter and confirmed their next plan. Xueqi went to deal with the matters of Cloud Spirit Palace while Miracle Dr. Bailey was in charge of treating Ji Chongkong's injuries. Ji Tianqing only needed to cultivate and recover his strength as soon as possible. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. On the morning of the 6th day, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation. His strength had recovered to its peak, and he was once again in high spirits. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Miracle Dr. Bailey had just finished casting the divine venomous insect. He quickly walked to the side of the cold ice jade bed and asked Miracle Dr. Bailey, "Master, how is my father?" Miracle Dr. Bailey looked at him and smiled while stroking his beard. "Tianqing, you woke up at the right time. I have just finished treating your father. Your father's injuries have completely healed. His soul has been repaired and strengthened by the Heaven Mending Pearl and his strength has increased by several times. Moreover, I have given him many spirit pills and soul-level elixirs. With the help of the Heaven Mending Pearl, he has absorbed the power of the elixirs and his strength has increased by leaps and bounds. He has reached the Origin Core realm. His body and soul have been modified and strengthened. His innate talent has also increased greatly. From now on, not only will he be able to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort, he will also have a high chance of breaking through to the Heaven Origin realm and becoming a Heaven Origin realm expert." Hearing Miracle Dr. Bailey's words, Ji Tianqing's face was full of smiles. He was very gratified and excited. He was happy for his father. "Master, you've worked hard during this period of time. Thank you for saving my father. This is great. Father has suffered for dozens of years. Now that the bitterness is finally over, this can be considered as a blessing in disguise." Divine Dr. Bailey nodded with a smile and said, "All right, Master has been casting spells every day for the past few days. My spiritual power and magic power have been greatly consumed. I will return to recuperate now. Your father's injuries have already healed, so I'll return this heaven-mending bead to you. Also, your father should be waking up soon. You should stay with him. You and your father must have a lot to talk about after going through this ordeal." Finished speaking, Divine Dr. Bailey returned the heaven-mending bead to Ji Tianqing and left the secret room with a smile. Only Ji Tianqing and his father were left in the secret chamber. Silence was restored immediately. Ji Tianqing held the heaven-mending orb in his hand as he stood beside the frigid ice jade bed, carefully sizing up his father. His father's complexion was rosy, and his life force was very stable. His skin was also glowing, and there was even a faint layer of white light. Moreover, he could also see that his father's white soul mist had become much more solid than before, and its volume had also increased by 2 times. This undoubtedly meant that his father's spiritual power had strengthened by several times. Seeing this, he was instantly stunned. He frowned and muttered to himself, "How can this be? I can actually see my father's spiritual power?" He was filled with shock and thought that he was hallucinating. With his strength at the heaven origin realm, he had yet to cultivate his divine soul. It was simply impossible for him to see other people's souls. In his shock, he lowered his head and looked at the heaven-mending bead in his left hand. The heaven-mending bead was shining with a dense brilliance, emitting an invisible mysterious power. He raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, could it be that the heaven-mending bead's power helped me see these things? The effects of this divine bead are too miraculous. Just as he was filled with doubts and thoughts, Ji Chongkong slowly woke up and opened his eyes. He was lying on the frigid ice jade bed. His eyes were somewhat blurry as he looked around. He muttered softly, "Where is this? Father, you're finally awake. That's great." Ji Tianxing came back to his senses. With a face full of surprise, he reached out to support him and helped him sit up on the frigid ice jade bed. Ji Chongkong looked at him with a joyful expression. "Tianxing? Was it you who saved me? Where are we?" Ji Tianxing supported his father and hurriedly explained, "Father, we're in Cloud Soul Palace. You were captured by the demon experts earlier and were heavily injured. You were unconscious for more than 10 days. Demon race? I was unconscious for more than 10 days? Ji Chongkong frowned and asked with a face full of confusion, "Tianxing, what happened? Hurry up and tell me." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "Father, more than 10 days ago, I went to the gate of Zhongzhou City to welcome you. In the end, I waited until dusk and didn't see you. Instead, I saw Zhongchen covered in blood." He recounted everything that had happened in detail. Of course, he skimmed over the matter of him going to the buried Star Sea and searching for the heaven-mending bead. After Ji Chongkong finished listening, he immediately revealed a guilty expression and said with a heavy tone, "Tianxing, it's really been hard on you. It's father's fault for being useless and not being strong enough. The first time I came to Zhongzhou City, I caused you to suffer such great danger and almost lose your life." Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianxing hurriedly shook his head and said, "Father, what are you saying? What trouble is there? You're my father. Even if I have to climb a mountain of blades or dive into a sea of fire, I definitely won't let you get hurt. I can only blame the demon race for being too despicable and vicious. I hate that I can't kill all the demon race in the world." That's right. The demon race is too savage, too despicable. Ji Chongkong was also full of hatred and said with a worried tone, "Tianxing, the demon race schemed to deal with you. You must be careful and protect yourself well." "Father, don't worry. I'll be careful." Ji Tianxing nodded and comforted him with a few words. The father and son chatted for a long time before their moods calmed down. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Father, Cloud Soul Palace is very safe. Your injuries have just healed, so you can temporarily stay in Cloud Soul Palace and recuperate and cultivate in peace." Ji Chongkong nodded and said, "That's good too. In a few days, I'll go and discuss with Asgard Master Yun and his wife to set the wedding date earlier. Tianxing, you don't have to worry about me. Concentrate on your matters." Thus, Ji Tianxing brought his father out of the secret room and arranged a place for his father to stay. After settling his father down, he returned to the secret room and prepared to cultivate in seclusion. The secret room was resplendent and filled with spirit energy. He sat in the secret room and took out the heaven-mending bead from his spatial ring. He held it in his palm and carefully observed it. Ever since he obtained the heaven-mending bead, he had never had the time to carefully study it. This was an item from ancient legends, a divine item that could mend the heavens. Whether it was the seal of mountains and rivers, the soul-reaping bell, or the green light treasure tree, none of them could be compared to it. Chapter 850. If he could comprehend how to control the heaven-mending orb, this divine item could become his greatest trump card and reliance. Pure hot Dharma eye. He shouted in a low voice and used his secret technique, causing his eyes to turn golden as he carefully observed the heaven-mending orb. However, his pure heart Dharma eye could see through falsehoods and disguises, but it could not see through the heaven-mending orb's essence and secrets. Clearly, his secret technique was useless against the heaven-mending orb. Thus, he used his spiritual sense to invade the heaven-mending orb. In the end, it still did not work. His spiritual sense was not strong enough and was completely blocked by the heaven-mending orb. He was unwilling to give up, so he used his majestic true essence and poured it into the heaven-mending orb, wanting to nourish and refine it. In the end, the true essence he poured in was like a clay ox entering the sea, completely devoured by the heaven-mending orb. Ji Tianqing busied himself for an entire day, but he still could not do anything about the heaven-mending orb. This heaven-mending orb was truly too mysterious. He did not cultivate the corresponding technique, so he could not control it. Helpless, he could only ask his master, Divine Dr. Bailey, for help. Divine Dr. Bailey was also helpless and could not do anything about it. He could use the heaven-mending orb's power to heal Ji Chongkong because he used an ancient and powerful secret medical technique. If Ji Tianqing wanted to refine the heaven-mending orb, even if he cultivated his secret medical technique, it would still be useless. After receiving this answer, Ji Tianqing could only return to the secret room. He decided to temporarily put the heaven-mending orb aside and prepared to cultivate and increase his strength. At this moment, Burial of Heaven's voice suddenly sounded in the depths of his mind. Perhaps, you can try the blood refining technique. Suddenly hearing Burial of Heaven's voice, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, then asked with a heart full of surprise, Burial of Heaven, weren't you in a deep sleep? Could it be that you have recovered your vitality? Recovered my vitality? Easier said than done. Burial of Heaven replied with a serious tone. Ji Tianqing was a little confused and said in his mind, You said you would be in a deep sleep for more than half a year, but you woke up in just a few days. What's going on? My soul remnant is indeed in a deep sleep, but this is a wisp of my divine telekinesis. I can still communicate with you, but I can't help you with anything, Buried Heaven explained. Of course it did not recover its vitality. It was only a strand of its consciousness. Previously, it to the heavens to condense soul of heaven's soul to form a soul clone using a secret technique. Of burial of heaven's soul of heaven to heaven's soul clone to heaven to burn to the end of heavens of soul form. Ji Tianqing understood this and nodded. So that's how it is. To the point. Burial of Heaven replied, That's a commonly used sacrificial refining method in ancient times. Many deity realm experts would use their blood to refine divine artifacts. This method can allow people to refine divine artifacts faster and get twice the result with half the effort. They can reach a state where their blood is connected to the divine artifact and their souls are connected, making it easier to use. Furthermore, the heaven-mending pearl is a divine artifact, and your blood contains Kenshin blood. It's most suitable for you to use the blood refining technique to refine this divine artifact. Ji Tianqing immediately understood what it meant. He said expectantly, All right, then hurry up and teach me the blood refining technique. Burial of Heaven did not waste any time and said directly, Remember, the blood refining technique's incantation is, Absolute void, absolute tranquility, all living things together, I will observe and repeat. Ji Tianqing did not dare to be negligent. He quickly held his breath and concentrated on memorizing the incantation. Fortunately, the incantation was not long, nor was it complicated. He quickly memorized it. After Burial of Heaven finished explaining the incantation, it gave him a few words of advice and then fell silent. Ji Tianqing silently comprehended the incantation of the blood refining technique. After meditating for 4 hours, he had basically comprehended the incantation. Thus, he began to try using the blood refining technique to refine the heaven-mending pearl. He took out the heaven-mending pearl and placed it in front of him. It floated quietly in the air and emitted a dense white light. Blood refining technique. He formed an incantation with both of his hands and quickly waved them around. He formed a mysterious seal and began to use the secret technique. As the brilliance on his fingertips flickered, streaks of flowing light arcs were drawn. They quickly condensed into a network of veins, like a net of interweaving light. This net, condensed from light, wrapped around the heaven-mending orb and circulated quickly. After finishing the incantation, he circulated his energy and forced out a drop of blood essence from his heart. He forced it out from the tip of his right index finger and dripped it on the net. Immediately, the faint golden blood essence spread out and flowed along the entire net. It flickered with a faint golden light and emitted a mysterious and powerful divine power. Blood refining. Condense. Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice and pointed at the heaven-mending pearl with both of his hands. The faint golden net immediately contracted and tightly wrapped around the heaven-mending pearl. It began to refine and fuse with it. The heaven-mending pearl also slowly rotated. It lit up with an even more dazzling white light and absorbed the faint golden net. As time passed, the faint golden net gradually disappeared and completely fused with the heaven-mending pearl. After 6 hours, the blood refining technique was completed. Ji Tianqing's heart blood successfully fused with the heaven-mending pearl. The blood refining was a success. At that moment, he immediately felt a mysterious connection between him and the heaven-mending pearl, as if they were connected by blood. He used the invisible power of his spiritual sense. With a thought, he could control the heaven-mending pearl to fly and rotate in front of him. With another thought, the heaven-mending pearl quickly shrunk and became only the size of a walnut. Whoosh! A white light flashed. Before he could react, the heaven-mending pearl drilled into his forehead and entered his mind. How can this be? Ji Tianqing was startled and his expression changed. Immediately after, he clearly felt the heaven-mending pearl drilled into the depths of his mind and entrenched itself there, guarding his soul tightly. In his mind, there was originally a nirvana divine crystal wrapped around his soul. A miraculous scene appeared. The heaven-mending pearl emitted a gentle white light and wrapped around his soul and the nirvana divine crystal. Immediately after, the nirvana divine crystal was catalyzed and burned. It turned into wisps of soul power and fused with his soul. His soul power rapidly increased. He felt as if he was full. His soul began to expand rapidly and his consciousness became a little dizzy. However, this was not a bad thing and there was no danger. His soul power was rapidly increasing. His soul was strengthened and was continuously becoming stronger. After a short half an hour, the entire Nirvana Divine Crystal was completely catalyzed. The Nirvana Divine Crystal had completely turned into soul power and strengthened his soul to the limit, reaching an incomparably powerful level. This caused his spiritual sense and mental reaction to increase by several times. Originally, his spiritual sense could only explore a radius of 700 meters. Now, it could explore a radius of 1,000 meters. This was the limit of a Sky Origin Realm expert. Only a half-step soul refinement realm expert could do this. Chapter 851. It is indeed a divine item. It is so magical. This Nirvana crystal had been in my head for a year. I could only absorb its power subtly. I didn't expect that the heaven-mending orb would only take 1 hour to activate all the power of the Nirvana crystal. It has strengthened my soul to the limit of the Sky Origin stage. My body is the ultimate sword body. It has already reached the limit of the Sky Origin stage. Now my soul has also reached the limit of the Sky Origin stage. It is almost the same as a half-soul cultivation stage cultivator. Although my cultivation level didn't increase, my combat ability has been doubled. Ji Tianqing was excited as these thoughts flashed through his mind. He had just refined the heaven-mending orb with the blood-refining art. How could he not be excited when he received such great benefits? At the same time, he was even more curious and expectant. What other magical effects did the heaven-mending orb have? After he calmed down, he started to cultivate and refine his sword heart. He wanted to reach the 8th level of the Sky Origin stage. Soon, he realized that the heaven-mending orb could not only protect his soul, but also his heart. When he refined his heart with the sword energy, he had to endure unparalleled pain and torture. His heart was also scarred. The heaven-mending orb seemed to have intelligence. When it saw that his heart was injured, it released a gentle white light to heal his wounds. As a result, his pain was greatly reduced. His heart was recovering faster. The refining effect was more than doubled. Before this, he estimated that he would need at least 3 months to reach the 8th level of the Sky Origin stage. However, it was different now. With the help of the heaven-mending orb, he had a feeling that he could reach the next level in half a month. The heaven-mending orb's extraordinary effect made his cultivation much easier. His cultivation speed was unbelievably fast. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. He had been cultivating in the secret room for 10 days without any rest. He actually broke through the next level and reached the 8th level of the Sky Origin stage. After 10 days of cultivation, Ji Tianqing reached the 8th level of the Sky Origin stage. With the help of the heaven-mending orb, his heart was refined to the extreme. It was extremely tough and strong. Next, he would proceed to the last step of the heart of the sword. He would merge the sword embryo with his heart to form the heart of the sword. Once the heart of the sword was formed, he would reach the 9th level of the Sky Origin stage. However, Ji Tianqing did not continue cultivating in seclusion. After meditating for a day and consolidating his martial arts foundation, he left the secret chamber. It was late at night, and there were 2 guards guarding the door of the secret room. Seeing him come out, the 2 guards hurriedly bowed and said, "Congratulations to young Master Ji for coming out of seclusion. Young Master Ji, the palace lord has ordered you to meet him after you come out of seclusion." Hearing the guard's report, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "Did Uncle Yun explain the reason?" The guard bowed respectfully and answered truthfully, "Not yet. Young Master Ji, you'll know when you see the palace lord." Ji Tianqing nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He walked towards Yun Zhongqi's residence. He knew that since Yun Zhongqi had arranged for the guards to wait for him here, there must be something he wanted to discuss with him. However, Yun Zhongqi didn't knock on his door to summon him, which meant that the matter wasn't particularly urgent. Could it be that Yao Yao and I have already agreed on the wedding date? The thought flashed through his mind, and a smile appeared on his face. His heart was filled with anticipation. 15 minutes later, he arrived at Yun Zhongqi's residence and came to the door of the study. The guard guarding the door of the study immediately saluted and reported his arrival to the study when he saw him. Young Master Ji is here." The light in the study was on, and Yun Zhongqi's voice sounded. "Let him in." The guard responded and hurriedly gestured for Ji Tianqing to come in. Ji Tianqing stepped into the study and saw Yun Zhongqi sitting in front of the desk. He seemed to be handling some business. There was a burning incense burner on the desk, and there were many piles of documents and memorials. More than half of them had yet to be read. It was obvious that Yun Zhongqi had been very busy recently, and he was very tired. Yun Zhongqi put down his writing brush and looked up at Ji Tianqing. He said in a gentle voice, "Tianqing, you've come out of seclusion? Ha! It's only been 10 days, and you've broken through again?" He was a powerful cultivator in the soul refining stage, so he could tell that Ji Tianqing had reached the 8th level of the sky origin stage. He was surprised, and he couldn't believe it. In less than a month, Ji Tianqing had broken through from the 7th level of the sky origin stage to the 8th level. That was godly speed. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He bowed and said, "Uncle Yun, why have you summoned me?" "Come, sit down and talk." Yun Zhongqi gestured for him to sit down. After he sat down, Yun Zhongqi smiled and said, "Tianqing, I have discussed with your father yesterday. We have decided to set your wedding date on the 9th day of the 11th month. That day is an auspicious day, and it is the best day for you to get married. It also means that your love will last forever." Ji Tianqing was surprised. He smiled and asked, "Uncle, the date is so close. There are only 2 months left. Do we have enough time to prepare?" Yun Zhongqi nodded and said, "2 months is enough." Cloud Soul Palace has already started to prepare. Also, when you and Yao Yao get married, you must hold a grand banquet in Zhongzhou City. It must be a grand banquet. Ji Tianqing was looking forward to it. He nodded and said, "Since Uncle and my father have already discussed it, then it is settled." "Thank you, Uncle." Yun Zhongqi smiled and didn't say anything. Then, he talked about the second matter. The situation in Zhongzhou City has been getting more and more chaotic. The demonic goo has been causing chaos in the hundreds of cities. The citizens are in a state of panic. The aftermath of the Duanmu clan's destruction has been suppressed by Cloud Soul Palace. However, Cloud Soul Palace can't do anything about the demonic goo. The lords of the various cities and the imperial court are doing their best to suppress it, but they can't get rid of the vicious demonic goo. Ji Tianqing immediately thought of Yun Yao when he mentioned the situation in Zhongzhou and the demonic goo. He asked Yun Zhongqi, "Uncle, didn't the imperial residents send the imperial princes out on missions?" Yao Yao was sent to Yuejian City. How is she doing? Is there any news? Yun Zhongqi's expression became serious. He revealed a worried look and said in a deep voice, "In the past half a month, Yao Yao contacted me a few times. The situation in Yuejian City is very chaotic. She is overseeing the situation in Yuejian City, but there is little effect. Not only that, but she has lost more than half of her subordinates. The day before yesterday, she even asked me to send a few elites from the Hidden Cloud Pavilion to help her." "What? Is the situation this bad?" Ji Tianqing was shocked, and his heart was filled with worry. He frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said in a serious tone, "Uncle, my father is temporarily staying in Cloud Soul Palace. Please take care of him. I want to rush to Yuejian City immediately to help Yao Yao take care of the situation in case she is in danger." Yun Zhongqi nodded and said, "That's why I called you here. Since that's the case, you should hurry and meet up with her." Ji Tianxing didn't waste any more time. After bowing and bidding farewell, he turned and walked out of the study. Chapter 852. Yuejian City was 8,000 miles away from Cloud Spirit Palace. It was a human city with hundreds of years of history. The surrounding area of the city was rich in a spirit flower called the moon primrose, so it was named Yuejian City. Although Ji Tianxing had never been to Yuejian City, he had heard of its reputation. He knew that it was a beautiful ancient city surrounded by a sea of flowers. The scenery was so pleasant that it made people forget to leave. While flying, he was still silently speculating about the current situation in Yuejian City. How was Yun Yao's situation? Was her life in danger? Ever since the demonic vermin broke out in the hundreds of cities in Zhongzhou, he had not personally checked the situation in each city. He had only heard that the situation in Zhongzhou was chaotic, but he did not know how serious the situation in each city was. Although Yun Yao was a genius, she had just reached the Sky Origin stage a few months ago and was only at the second level of the Sky Origin stage. He could not help but worry that if Yun Yao encountered those demon kings, would her life be in danger? The night passed quickly. When dawn broke, he arrived outside Yuejian City. He was still dozens of miles away when he looked down from the sky and saw the scene inside and outside Yuejian City. There were plains in all four directions outside the city, which had been cultivated into medicinal fields for the moon primrose. There were thousands of acres of plains. Originally, there was a sea of pink and pale yellow flowers outside the city, and the fresh fragrance of the flowers could be smelled from hundreds of miles away. But now, the medicinal fields outside the city had been destroyed, and the sea of flowers had been turned into ruins. The ground was full of ravines and cracks, and there were also huge pits. Those were obviously the traces left behind by powerful cultivators after a great battle. The once fragrant sea of flowers had disappeared, and the ground outside Yuejian City was a mess. Ji Tianxing had a bad premonition, and his mood and expression were very heavy. He landed outside the city gates from the sky, and saw that the city gates were tightly shut and heavily guarded. There were more than 30 black armored guards on both sides of the city gates, all of them wearing armor and carrying swords, exuding a murderous aura. It was early in the morning, and there were a few caravans and a dozen or so commoners gathered at the city gates, quietly waiting for the city gates to open. Ji Tianxing frowned and walked to the city gate. 2 black armored guards immediately stopped him and said in a cold voice, "It's not time yet. The city gate won't open. Step back." Ji Tianxing frowned. He flipped his hand and took out the martial monarch badge. "I'm Crown Prince Ji Tianxing." When the 2 guards saw the emperor's token and heard his words, they immediately knelt down respectfully. The 30 or so guards on both sides of the city gate also knelt down on one knee and paid their respects to him. After the salute, the guard captain hurriedly came forward and respectfully said, "This lowly one pays his respects to young Master Ji." Ji Tianxing put away the emperor's token and looked at him with a dignified expression. He asked, "Tell me, what happened in the city?" The captain of the guards didn't dare to hide anything and quickly answered truthfully. "Reporting to young Master Ji, there has been a demonic parasite wreaking havoc in the city recently, causing the people to suffer. In the past month, more than 20 young elites have successively been poisoned by the demonic parasite. They have gone on a killing spree in the city and cruelly poisoned more than 2,000 people. The people in the city are in a state of panic. The Devil Clan also took the opportunity to wreak havoc and slaughter the people outside the city. Fortunately, the imperial residents sent young Master Yun Yao to take charge of the situation in the city lord's mansion. Only then did the people calm down. Young Master Yun Yao ordered the city to be under martial law. The city gate will be opened at 4:45 a.m. every day and closed at 4:45 p.m. in the evening. After listening to the guard captain's report, Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said in a solemn tone, "In that case, we'll follow young Master Yun Yao's orders. I'll enter the city myself and go to the city lord's mansion to find young Master Yun Yao." After saying that, he leaped into the sky and jumped onto the city wall. The huge Tianyuan array protected the entire Yuejian city and enveloped the city walls on all sides. However, this wasn't a problem for him at all. He just used a little trick and opened a gap in the array. Swoosh! His figure flashed through the gap in the array and flew into Xueqi City. The gap in the array quickly healed on its own. The many guards, merchants and people at the city gate all showed deep admiration and reverence when they saw his figure flying into the sky and burrowing into the ground. In recent months, the name Ji Tianqing could be said to have reverberated like thunder in his ears. Many people had heard of his reputation and deeds. They immediately whispered to each other and let out waves of exclamations. The guards guarding the city gate were also excited to see him with their own eyes. His personal visit to Xueqi City also made the guards feel more secure and more at ease. Ji Tianqing flew above Xueqi City and went straight to the city lord's mansion. Along the way, he saw that the streets and alleys were deserted. There were no peddlers hawking, nor were there any people strolling on the streets. The doors of the various shops were tightly shut and looked very desolate. Some of the buildings were even damaged. There were traces of fighting and some dilapidated walls. Seeing this scene, it wasn't difficult for Ji Tianqing to guess that there must have been many fights in the city before. Not long after, he descended outside the gates of the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion was also heavily guarded and tightly guarded. After he reported his identity, the guards guarding the gate immediately went to the mansion to report the news. Someone led him into the mansion and headed to the guest hall. He sat in the hall for a moment when footsteps came from outside the door. A man and a woman were walking quickly into the hall. The first to step into the hall was a beautiful woman in a white dress. It was his fiancée, Yun Yao. After not seeing her for half a month, Yun Yao's temperament was as cold as ever, like a fairy from the ninth heaven. However, her brows and eyes were filled with fatigue and worry. The man behind her was a middle-aged expert in his early 40s with a tall and sturdy figure. This person was dressed luxuriously and had a dignified bearing. He was the city lord of Xueqi City. After Yun Yao entered the hall, her eyes stared at Ji Tianqing and hurriedly called out, "Tianqing, you're finally back. During this period of time, I've been worried about you every day." Ji Tianqing hurriedly went up to her and held her hand. He revealed a gentle smile. "Yao Yao, I said that I'll be fine. When have I ever broken my promise to you? On the other hand, you've worked so hard for Xueqi City. It's been hard on you for the past half a month." The two of them looked at each other with deep tenderness. Their hearts were connected and they were worried about each other. The city lord of Xueqi City tactfully lowered his head and looked elsewhere. He remained silent so as not to disturb the two of them. After a while, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao talked to each other and their emotions calmed down. Yun Yao introduced him and the city lord of Xueqi City. She introduced them to each other. "Tianqing, this is Xueqi City's city lord Yi. City lord Yi, this is the famous Prince Ji Tianqing of the Central State. He's the Tianjin region lord and also my future husband." The city lord of Xueqi City's eyes lit up. He looked at Ji Tianqing with admiration. He bowed respectfully and said, "Young Master Ji, this one has heard of your great name." Chapter 853. For City Lord Yi, Ji Tianqing was the person he worshipped the most. This prodigy prince had too much glory and halo on him. He was simply a legendary figure who could only be heard of but rarely seen in person. Ji Tianqing's sudden visit to Xueqi City made him feel flattered and inexplicably excited. "City Lord Yi, you don't have to be so polite. I came to Xueqi City this time only to visit my fiancée and help her solve her problems." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said calmly, "I see that the situation in Xueqi City is tense. Why don't we get down to business first?" His confidence, elegance, and calmness made City Lord Yi admire him even more. City Lord Yi hurriedly made a please gesture and said respectfully, "Young Master Ji, please take a seat. Please allow me to slowly report to you." Ji Tianqing nodded and sat down with Yun Yao, listening to City Lord Ye's report. In the past month, the demonic parasite chaos in the city has become more and more intense. 26 young talents have successively been infected by the demonic parasites. After being infected, they became bloodthirsty and cruel demonic parasite puppets and went on a killing spree in the city. 14 grand clans were destroyed, and some of them were even completely wiped out. After the news spread, it caused great panic in the city. The city lord manor did their best to investigate and caught more than a dozen puppets infected with demonic parasites. After forcibly extracting the parasites, those people died one after another. After Miss Yun Yao came to take charge of the situation, she caught 7 more puppets in a row and dealt with all of them. Moreover, Miss Yun Yao ordered the entire city to be under martial law, making it difficult for the demons to sneak into the city to sow demonic parasites. Not only that, Miss Yun Yao also sent out a large number of experts to investigate suspicious people in the city. So far, there are more than 100 suspicious people locked up in the City Lord Manor's prison. Miss Yun Yao's series of measures were very effective. As expected, the situation in the city has stabilized a lot. There are no new demonic parasite puppets appearing. City Lord Yi gave a general overview of the city's situation. His words were full of admiration and respect for Yun Yao. Obviously, Yun Yao's actions in this half a month of time in Yuejian City had long since subdued him, causing him to submit willingly. After hearing this, Ji Tianqing frowned doubtfully and asked, City Lord Yi, if the situation is really like this, the crisis in Yuejian City has been mostly eliminated. The situation should be stabilized, right?
This,
City Lord Yi hesitated for a moment, looking hesitant. Yun Yao explained to Ji Tianqing, Tianqing, there's something you don't know. Not only hasn't the city's situation has not improved, but it's worse. The City Lord's mansion and I have eliminated 24 demonic venomous puppets, but these demonic venomous puppets were discovered early and were relatively weak, so it was not difficult to deal with them. However, there are still 2 or 3 fish that escaped the net that we haven't found yet. They are still roaming around outside causing trouble. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, 2 or 3? What do you mean? Yun Yao hurriedly explained, there's a person whose situation is a little special, and I can't determine it for the time being. This person was Chao Jingfeng, the eldest son of the Chao family in the eastern city, and one of the 3 martial arts geniuses in Yuejian City. A month ago, the entire Chao clan was massacred overnight. All 84 people were killed and turned into white bones. Everyone thought that the Chao family had been killed by the demonic venomous puppets. They sighed and were shocked. However, after I checked the records of the City Lord's mansion, I found out that the Chao family originally had 85 people. Upon hearing this, Ji Tianqing vaguely understood something and said in a deep voice, the Chao family has 85 people, but there are only 84 corpses here. Therefore, one of them is still alive. That person didn't survive. Perhaps he's the puppet that was poisoned by the demonic goo, Chao Jingfeng?
Yes.
Yun Yao nodded and continued. After that, I found it strange, so I used the soul imprinting lamp and the secret technique to identify those skeletons. After some investigation, I realized that the missing person was Chao Jingfeng. I suspect that he was poisoned by the demonic goo and killed everyone in the Chao family after he went crazy. However, I still couldn't find him. Ji Tianqing nodded and silently noted this down. Yao Yao, continue. Yun Yao continued, other than Chao Jingfeng, the other 2 escaped and became demonic goo puppets for a long time. After they killed countless people, their strength has increased by several times. I once led the guards of the City Lord's mansion to capture a demonic goo puppet. However, he escaped after killing a large number of guards. Moreover, even I was no match for him. Upon hearing this, Ji Tianqing's expression became more serious. He frowned slightly and said, after the demonic goo puppet devours flesh and souls, its strength will continue to increase. It can even split and reproduce. If the 2 demonic goo puppets kill more people, their strength will only increase. It's very likely that they can create more demonic goo puppets. Yun Yao nodded and said in a serious tone, that's right, that's right. I suspect that the number of demonic goo puppets roaming outside is still increasing. We must get rid of the 2 demonic goo puppets as soon as possible. We can't let them continue to grow stronger or they will only harm more people. Now, the city is heavily guarded and patrolled. The situation is still considered stable. However, there are many villages outside the city. The City Lord's mansion's military strength is unable to protect them. The situation is very dangerous. Just 2 nights ago, thousands of people in Wild South Village were killed overnight. Even the chickens, ducks, and livestock were all killed. Last night, the 2 villages 100 miles away from Wild South Village were also killed overnight. They were also burned to ashes by fire. I suspect that these 2 tragedies are related to the 3 demonic goo puppets roaming around. However, I can't do anything about it now. I don't know how to capture the 3 demonic goo puppets. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, "The 3 demonic goo puppets are hiding outside the city. It's really difficult to find them."
According to what you said, the 3 demonic goo puppets are not only very strong, but they also have evolved to a certain extent.
They know how to hide during the day and attack at night. This is very difficult to deal with. Since it's difficult for the City Lord's mansion's military strength to protect all the villages, then send experts and soldiers to escort the people to the city in batches. No matter how strong the 3 demonic goo puppets are, they won't dare to attack the army openly. We must first ensure the safety of the city and let the people have a place to live. Then, we will think of ways to search for them. After hearing this, Yun Yao thought for a moment and explained, "Tianqing, I have thought of this method before. However, there are 12 towns and hundreds of villages under Yujian City's jurisdiction. It's almost impossible to transfer all the people to the city. Moreover, all the people add up to nearly 200,000 people. The City Lord's mansion can't settle them at all." Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment, then said, "Since we can't transfer all of them, then transfer the people from the villages to the towns first. Send as many soldiers as possible to guard the towns. If we really can't station soldiers in the towns and villages, then transfer the people to the city." "Yes, that's the only way." Yun Yao nodded in agreement and immediately gave the order to City Lord Yi. City Lord Yi didn't dare to be negligent. After receiving the order, he immediately left the guest hall and went to carry out the order. After he left, only Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were left in the hall. After discussing official matters, the two started to talk about private matters. Yun Yao looked at Ji Tianqing and asked with concern, "Tianqing, how is Uncle's situation? Did you find that treasure?" Ji Tianqing nodded and revealed a smile. "I have already obtained the Heaven Mending Pearl. Master used the Heaven Mending Pearl to heal my father's injuries." Chapter 854. When Yun Yao learned that the wedding date had been set, a hint of shyness appeared in her eyes, and her heartbeat sped up. Why is the date so close? Can it be ready in 2 months? She lowered her head slightly, her cheeks were slightly red, and her voice was filled with shyness. Ji Tianqing held her slender waist and said with a smile, "Uncle said that the Cloud Spirit Palace has already begun preparations, and 2 months is enough. Moreover, I also want to marry you as soon as possible and fulfill my long-cherished wish." "Long-cherished wish?" Yun Yao raised her eyebrows and looked at him with a complicated expression. She asked, "We have known each other for less than 2 years, so how can it be considered a long-cherished wish?" Ji Tianqing revealed a playful smile and whispered in her ear, "From the first time I saw you, I thought in my heart that one day, I will definitely marry you as my wife." The gentle whisper sounded in her ear, and the warm air brushed against her sparkling earlobes, which immediately turned her earlobes red. It was very cute. A thick sense of shyness welled up in her heart, causing her to lower her head in embarrassment. She whispered in a trembling voice, "Tianqing, when you first saw me, you already had such thoughts?" "Of course," Ji Tianqing said with certainty, "although I was a toad at that time, and you were a noble swan, however, a toad that doesn't want to eat a swan is not a good toad." After saying that, he stretched out his arms and wrapped them around Yun Yao's slender waist, hugging her tightly in his arms. Yun Yao became even more embarrassed. She nestled in his arms, and her heart was filled with complicated thoughts. Looking back on the past year, all the things that had happened between the two of them made her filled with emotions. After a long time, the two of them separated. The two of them left the guest hall and rushed to Yun Yao's study, where they continued to discuss the matter of Yuejian City. 4 hours later, it was noon. Ji Tianqing left the city lord's mansion alone and rushed to the Chao mansion in the East City to personally check the situation. The Chao clan was one of the grand clans in Yuejian City. With a heritage of over 300 years, their power was not to be underestimated. Moreover, the Chao family had been like the sun in the sky in recent decades. There were many talented people in the family, and the family business was very prosperous. Sadly, at the peak of the Chao clan's glory, this tragedy happened. The 80-plus people in the clan were all killed. It was truly a tragedy. This matter caused a huge uproar in the city, causing countless commoners' expressions to change as they talked about it. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the Chao residence, he saw that the huge residence was surrounded by city guards. No one dared to approach the manor. Occasionally, there would be commoners who would pass by, but they would try their best to stay away from the Chao manor. They would walk away quickly with fearful expressions. The magnificent estate was deathly silent, and it was suffused with traces of a ghastly and terrifying aura. Even though it was broad daylight, it still made people feel uneasy and panicked. Ji Tianqing walked to the gate of the Chao mansion and was stopped by 4 city guards. This place has been sealed by the city lord's residence. Without the city lord's residence's order, no one is allowed to enter. I'm the crown prince, Ji Tianqing. I'm here to investigate. He took out his identity token and said in a dignified voice. The 4 city guards' expressions changed. They immediately bowed respectfully and opened the gate for him. Ji Tianqing stepped through the gate and walked into the Chao residence. As soon as he entered, he saw a spacious front yard. There were a few Chinese parasol trees in the yard. They were 30 meters tall and were at least 100 years old. The wide canopy almost covered the entire front yard, blocking the noon sun and making the yard a little shady. Under a Chinese parasol tree that was as thick as a water tank, there was a pile of white bones. There was also a waist saber and half a set of armor on the ground. Ji Tianqing glanced at it and could tell that it was the skeleton of a middle-aged man. He should be a guard of the Chao residence. There was an ancient well in the corner of the yard. There was a circle of bluestone around the well. The winch at the mouth of the well was intact. There was even a well rope and a bucket hanging from it. However, there was a pile of white bones, an embroidered sachet, and a pair of embroidered shoes beside the well. Ji Tianqing walked through the front yard expressionlessly. He looked around calmly and saw one skeleton after another. Ever since the tragedy in the Chao residence, the city lord's residence had sent troops to seal off this place and did not allow outsiders to enter. The scene in the Chao residence was still the same as before. When Ji Tianqing saw those skeletons, some images vaguely appeared in his mind. He could roughly guess the scene of the incident. The main yard had the most people living in it, and it also had the most skeletons. Especially outside the main hall of the Chao residence, there were more than 20 piles of skeletons scattered on both sides of the bluestone steps and the main road. There were men and women, old and young, but the way they died was similar. They had all been devoured by the demonic venomous puppets and turned into piles of white bones on the ground. Ji Tianqing walked around the Chao residence and found a total of 84 skeletons. Some of the skeletons were lying in hidden places like the woodshed and the cellar. If Yun Yao did not tell him the exact number of people in the Chao family, he would not be surprised. From the looks of it, the Chao family had met with an unexpected calamity and was wiped out overnight. However, the eldest young master of the Chao family, Chao Jingfeng's body was not there, and his whereabouts had been unknown for a month. After Ji Tianqing investigated the situation in the Chao residence, he was 80% sure that the person who killed the Chao family was Chao Jingfeng. A young man with a bright future was turned into a demonic puppet that only knew how to kill. He killed everyone in his family, including his own parents and siblings. Vicious demonic venomous insects, damned demons. He clenched his fists secretly, anger and murderous intent building up in his chest. He could not wait to tear the demonic king and all the demons into pieces. At this moment, he suddenly frowned and revealed a puzzled look. He could vaguely feel that there was a warm feeling in his head, as if something was burning in his mind. However, he did not feel any discomfort, and the temperature on his forehead was very normal. There was nothing unusual. He hurriedly used his spiritual sense to look inside and saw that the heaven-mending pearl in his mind was shining with a dense white light, emitting an invisible mysterious power. The heaven-mending pearl is reacting as expected. However, is this some kind of omen? This thought flashed through his mind, and he walked around the Chao residence twice with a heart full of doubts. However, the abnormal reaction of the heaven-mending pearl did not disappear, and it was still shining with a dense white light. However, he did not find any clues, and he did not understand what was going on. The heaven-mending pearl was too mysterious and powerful. He knew nothing about its effects and secrets. Helpless, he could only temporarily leave the Chao residence and return to the city lord's mansion. When he returned to the city lord's mansion, the heaven-mending pearl had calmed down and was no longer shining with a white light. Seeing this scene, he was sure that the heaven-mending pearl's strange phenomenon had something to do with the Chao residence. Other than the fact that the Chao residence was wiped out by the demonic venomous insect puppet, there was nothing special about it. Chapter 855. Late at night, the night sky was as dark as ink, without any stars or moon. Curfew had long been in effect in Yujian City. The city was pitch black, with only a few places lit up. All the streets and alleys in the city were closed. Even the brothels, taverns, and gambling houses that were only lively at night were closed for the day. In the huge Yuzhen city, very few people came out except for the patrolling city guards. The atmosphere in the city was solemn and oppressive. Even the night sky seemed to be shrouded in a layer of haze, making it hard for the people to breathe and full of fear and worry. In the city lord's mansion, Yun Yao's study was still lit. She was still busy in the study, dealing with official business in the city. Ever since she came to Yuzhen City, she had been busy every day for half a month. She had to work until late at night before she could rest. Especially today, when Ji Tianxing proposed to move the people in the villages outside the city into the city. This was a major matter that had to be handled carefully. She was bent over the table, reviewing the memorials and files on the table. Sometimes she would write quickly, and sometimes she would frown in deep thought. Obviously, she was completely immersed in her work. She worked hard for the people of Yuzhen City and only wanted to maintain the city's peace. 100 steps away from the study was Ji Tianxing's residence. As Yun Yao's fiancé, he had come to the city lord's mansion. Of course, he had to live with Yun Yao. Of course, it was just living in the same courtyard. Their rooms were facing each other, separated by a wide courtyard. Although it was late at night, Ji Tianxing was not resting. He was standing by the window, looking at the study opposite, watching Yun Yao's busy figure through the window. Yao Yao, you are indeed beautiful on the outside and intelligent on the inside. Cold on the outside but warm on the inside. The world thinks of you as an otherworldly fairy who doesn't care about the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the human world and the suffering of the common people. Only I know that you are kind-hearted, pure, and flawless. You even have the love to help the common people. He murmured in his heart, his eyes full of tenderness, and a gentle smile on his lips. Even if the world is in chaos, and the demon emperor is causing trouble, I will protect you and never let you come to harm. The devil emperor was a threat to the world, so I killed him. The demons run amok and harm the people of Li. I will wipe them out. Thinking of this, he secretly clenched his fists, an unyielding pride surging in his chest. Unknowingly, he had already stood by the window for an hour. Just as he was about to turn around and return to his bed to meditate, he suddenly felt a warm sensation in his mind. That familiar feeling appeared once again. He hurriedly used his spiritual sense to investigate, and found that the heaven-mending orb in his mind was flickering with white light again, like a rising flame. He could clearly sense that the heaven-mending orb was emitting a mysterious, formless power that was extending into the night sky. The heaven-mending orb is reacting again. Could it be that something is going to happen in the city lord's mansion? Ji Tianxing muttered in his heart, and hurriedly calmed his mind to sense the changes in the heaven-mending orb. Very quickly, his soul began to throb as a thought appeared in his mind. Yuzhen, south of the city. He didn't understand why either. He only felt that the heaven-mending orb seemed to be guiding him, conveying some kind of thought to him. Thus, he quietly walked out of the room and prepared to go to the south to take a look. In order not to alarm Yun Yao and the guards of the city lord's mansion, he silently flew into the night sky and rushed south as fast as lightning. Swoosh! He sped through the night and saw that the southern part of the city was as dark as ink, without any movement. He immediately understood that the heaven-mending orb wasn't guiding him to the southern part of the city, but to the south of Yuzhen City. Thus, he flew over the southern city gate, left Yuzhen City, and continued to fly south. Outside the southern gate of Yuzhen City was a plain with a radius of several dozen miles. It was originally a medicinal field where the moon primrose was planted. However, the medicinal field had long been reduced to ruins. Even under the dark night sky, one could clearly see the ravines and pits on the ground. Ji Tianxing crossed the plain with a radius of several dozen miles and continued to fly south. Soon, he crossed a mountain range and entered a group of mountains. The mountains around Yuzhen City were not tall, and the mountain slopes were also relatively low. There were many plains and valleys in the mountains, and there were many small towns and villages. Ji Tianxing flew above the mountains and hurried on his way while paying attention to the heaven-mending orb's reaction. He quickly discovered that the further south he flew, the stronger the warm feeling in his mind, and the greater the heaven-mending orb's reaction. It seems that I'm getting closer and closer to the place the heaven-mending orb is guiding me to. An hour later, he had flown more than 300 miles, crossed several mountain ranges, and passed several villages. When he crossed another mountain range, he saw a long and narrow valley behind the mountain.
In the valley, with a radius of several dozen miles, there was a small town.
This was the town furthest away from Yujian City, called Moonfall Town. The town was not large, and there were only 2,000 households, with a population of about 7,000 to 8,000 people. Half a month ago, the city lord's mansion had sent a group of city guards to station in this town. Although there were only 100 city guards, it was barely enough to guard this town. Under the dark night sky, the town was very quiet, and only a few scattered lights were lit. The 4 entrances of the town were guarded by more than 10 city guards. There was also a patrol team of more than 10 people, who were wearing armor and carrying swords, patrolling the town through the night. For the past 2 months, Moonfall Town had been very peaceful, and nothing out of the ordinary had happened. This place was rather far from Yujian City, and was less affected by the demonic venomous puppets, so the townspeople were rather peaceful. However, when Ji Tianqing arrived in the sky above Moonfall Town, he frowned and muttered to himself in a low voice. According to the heaven-mending orb's guidance, this is the place. He used a secret technique to hide his presence, and quietly hid in the night sky above the town, overlooking the entire town from above. Although the night was dark, he could still see the entire town clearly after using the pure mind Dharma eye. The rows of houses and streets, as well as the few luxurious mansions in the town, all fell into his eyes. The stray cats and dogs that roamed the town at night, as well as the city guards patrolling the town, were all clearly seen by him. He hid in the night sky, patiently observing the situation in Moonfall Town, and silently waited. Suddenly, he noticed a black shadow darting out of a mansion on the east side of the town. The black shadow cut through the night sky like a gust of wind, and left the mansion in the blink of an eye, entering a small alley. This person was very agile and moved very quickly. He was also dressed in black, so he was very hidden in the night. He silently passed through the streets and alleys, and flew out of the town, looking very suspicious. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing was high up in the sky, so he could see everything. A Heaven Prime expert who can fly actually appeared in a town of a few thousand people? Something's wrong. He frowned and without hesitation, he chased after the black shadow. Chapter 856. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to show himself. He followed behind the black shadow, maintaining a distance of 100 feet. His spiritual sense could cover a radius of 1,000 meters, so he was not afraid of the black shadow escaping. When he followed the black shadow out of the town and flew in the sky, he found that the black shadow was a little strange. From the appearance, it was a tall young man wearing a black robe and carrying a quilt on his shoulder. The quilt was bulging, as if it was hiding a person. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned as he roughly guessed what was going on. Could it be that the black-robed man is a demon disguised as a human, taking advantage of the night to kidnap the young elites of the town and bring them back to the demon cave to plant the demon insects? Thinking of this, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He decided not to make a move first. After following the black-robed man to the demon cave, he would see if the black-robed man had any accomplices and then kill them all. After a while, the black-robed man flew to the mountain peak east of the town and quickly went into the forest. In the depths of the forest, there was a pile of rocks, and the rocks covered a cave. The black-robed man carried the quilt into the cave and blocked the entrance with a millstone. But Ji Tianqing followed closely and directly used the earth escape technique to enter the cave. This cave was not big, only 20 square meters, and there were traces of man-made excavation. There were a few huge blue stones scattered in the cave, but there was no secret room, stone bench, stone chair, or other things. It looked very simple and primitive. Ji Tianqing hid in the corner of the cave and secretly sized it up. He could not help but be puzzled. Such a simple and crude demon cave? There is not even a formation in the cave? It doesn't seem to make sense. He carefully observed again and immediately made a new discovery. There was a huge pile of bones under a millstone in the southeast corner of the cave. The pile was more than 3 meters high. He roughly estimated that there were at least 30 skeletons. At this moment, the black-robed man carried the quilt to the corner of the cave and threw the quilt on the millstone. After the quilt scattered, a young man in his 20s rolled out of the quilt. This young man wore a brocade robe, and his entire body was suffused with a true essence aura. He was actually an Origin Core realm martial artist. However, This person was lying on the ground unconscious. Clearly, he was in a coma. The black-robed man stood where he was.
He lowered his head and stared at the young warrior.
Then, he slowly lifted his sleeves.
Then, he opened his mouth and let out a muffled roar.
Suddenly, he stretched out his hands.
A dark red mist suddenly spewed out of his mouth, enveloping the young martial artist on the ground.
Seeing this familiar scene, Ji Tianqing's body shook and he immediately understood everything. It turned out that the black-robed man did not want to sow demonic parasites, but wanted to devour the young martial artist's flesh and soul. The black-robed man was not a devil, but a devil-venomous insect puppet. The dark red fog was about to engulf the young martial artist and turn him into a skeleton. At this critical juncture, Ji Tianqing brazenly made his move, waving his palm and sending out a sharp golden sword light towards the black-robed man. At the same time, he rushed to the corner of the cave like a stream of light, wanting to rescue the young martial artist. Whoosh!
The 3-foot-long golden sword light instantly cut through the dark night sky and stabbed to the side of the black-robed man.
He actually sensed that something was wrong and immediately retracted the dark red fog. His figure flashed and he moved 10 meters away. Swoosh!
The golden sword light that was as fast as a stream of light was actually dodged by him.
The sword light brushed past his shoulder and ruthlessly nailed into the rock wall of the cave. It blasted a large hole in the hard rock wall with a muffled bang. Although Ji Tianqing's sword strike missed, he forced the black-robed man to retreat and successfully rescued the young martial artist.
He rushed to the corner of the cave, stretched out his hand, and grabbed the unconscious young warrior in his hand.
At this time, the black-robed man glared at him and let out an angry roar. Roar! The roar that was filled with a tyrannical aura reverberated violently in the cave. The black-robed man's eyes were like 2 balls of crimson flames. His face and skin were suffused with a light purple color and thick fur had grown out. Especially his mouth. It was flat and wide with bloodstains. His teeth were as sharp as a beast's and there were 2 sharp fangs in his mouth. Although he still looked like a human, his face and appearance had turned into a ferocious demon. Ji Tianqing stared at him and slightly opened his eyes. He was astonished. Could it be that the demonic worm in his body has evolved? Is that why he looks like this and has developed some intelligence? At this moment, the black-robed man suddenly raised both of his palms and slapped out 2 balls of purple flame toward Jian Wushuang fiercely. Jian Wushuang immediately realized that the black-robed man had reached the 5th level of the sky origin stage. The 2 balls of purple flame that were as big as wash basins were powerful enough to destroy half of the mountain. At this critical moment, he held the unconscious young martial artist in his right hand and slapped out a flaming sword light with his left hand without hesitation. Red Dragon Flash. The 10-meter-long flaming sword light was like a flaming dragon. It carried the power to destroy the world and fiercely hit the black-robed man. Bang! Amidst the deafening noise, the crimson flame greatsword fiercely struck the 2 balls of brilliant purple flames. The 2 fireballs exploded with a bang, bursting into purple flames that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. The red flame sword didn't slow down at all. It hit the black-robed man again and blew him away. He hit the wall of the cave. After that, the power of the red flame sword exploded and broke the cave into pieces. Boom! An earth-shattering sound echoed in the dark night sky. It startled the people within dozens of miles. Endless purple flames and crimson flames blasted the entire mountain into pieces, causing it to collapse into a pile of ruins. Dust and gravel mixed with purple flames and crimson flames illuminated the night sky within a radius of dozens of kilometers. At that moment, the mountains and the land within hundreds of miles were shaking. The citizens of Moonset Town were all startled awake from their dreams, letting out cries of terror. Flames lit up in the town, and noises of people could be heard. There were also a few city guard experts who rushed to the ruins at lightning speed, wanting to see what had happened. Swoosh! A figure in a white robe suddenly flew out from the dust and flames. He was none other than Ji Tianqing. His entire body was unscathed, and he was even carrying the unconscious young martial artist in his hand. He stood thousands of feet high in the sky and frowned as he looked down at the ruins. His eyes were sharp as lightning as he looked around. Damn the demonic venomous puppet. It has evolved to such a powerful level. It didn't die from my sword strike? Although the mountain was in ruins and the world was in chaos, he couldn't see anything clearly. But he knew that the black-robed man wasn't killed in one strike. He was only severely injured. Chapter 857. Ji Tianxing was high up in the night sky, using his Sushin Dharma eye to look down at the ruins. His eyes were like lightning as he released his spiritual sense to cover an area of 1,000 meters. The man in black robe was strange, but he was only in sky origin stage. There was no way he could escape from Jian Wushuang. After a while, a wisp of black fog floated out from the ruins of the mountain. The black fog floated silently in the night sky, drifting away into the distance with the smoke and dust that filled the sky. After it floated out for 1,000 meters, it saw that there was no danger around, so it sped up and ran away as fast as lightning. Swoosh! The black fog condensed into an arrow and flew away from the ruins in the blink of an eye, heading deep into the mountains. At the same time, Ji Tianxing noticed it in the sky. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Humph! Strange indeed. However, it's impossible for you to escape from my grasp. As he spoke, he chased after the black fog. Whoosh! Although he was carrying an unconscious young cultivator, it did not affect his speed at all. His body was glowing with golden light. He was like a golden meteor flying across the night sky, leaving a golden arc in the night sky. After a few breaths, he caught up with the black fog. They were less than 300 meters away. He waved his hand and slashed out a huge golden sword towards the black fog. Swoosh! The huge golden sword slashed across the night sky and hit the black fog. The black fog was cut into two halves. The two halves of the black fog fell from the sky and landed on the mountain below. After they landed, the two halves of the black fog gathered together and turned back into the man in black robe. He was badly injured. He was lying on the grass on the mountain peak, panting heavily. He only had half of his body left. His left arm and leg were gone. Half of his bloody face looked even more ferocious. However, the blood flowing out of his body was black demon blood. His bones were glowing with purple light. If he was a normal sky origin stage cultivator, he would have been dead by now. However, the man in black robe did not seem to feel any pain. He did not care about his injuries. He roared angrily, uttering syllables that no one could understand. He struggled to get up from the grass and tried to escape again. But at this moment, Ji Tianxing arrived. He descended from the sky and landed on the mountain peak, appearing in front of the black-robed man. When he saw the black-robed man's injuries, his pupils suddenly shrank, revealing a look of great surprise. He's still alive after suffering such heavy injuries? I want to see just how strong the evolved demonic goo is. As he spoke, he stretched out his left hand to grab the black-robed man. His left hand surged with golden light, condensing into a giant golden palm the size of a millstone, and immediately grabbed the black-robed man. The black-robed man was caught by the giant golden palm. He struggled and roared, but it was useless. He couldn't escape at all. Ji Tianxing placed the unconscious young martial artist on the ground and slowly raised his right hand. He released a mysterious black hole and pressed it on the back of the black-robed man. The mysterious black light burst forth with an incomparably powerful devouring power, and quickly sucked out the demonic goo from the black-robed man's body. Swoosh! A pitch-black demonic goo the size of half a palm suddenly appeared in Ji Tianxing's palm, wrapped in a mass of golden light. This demonic goo's appearance was ferocious and ugly. It actually had 2 heads, a fat body, and 4 pairs of wings. Its strength was very strong. It struggled desperately, madly twisting its body, opened its mouth, and gnawed the golden light into pieces. This was the demonic goo, the evolved demonic goo. After the demonic goo in the black-robed man's body was extracted, it immediately stopped struggling and roaring. Like a deflated balloon, it quickly shrank and shrank. In just a few short breaths, he collapsed into a ball of skin, weathered into a pile of black ashes, and dissipated between heaven and earth. Only a tattered black robe was left on the grass, proving that the black-robed man had once existed. Ji Tianxing glanced at the tattered black robe, then withdrew his gaze and carefully stared at the demonic goo in his palm. This demonic goo's size and strength are several times larger than the ones I've seen before. Moreover, this demonic goo has grown 2 heads, and seems to be about to split and reproduce. Fortunately, I caught this guy in time, or else a new demonic goo puppet would have appeared very quickly. The evolved demonic goo puppet not only had intelligence, but also knew how to escape and hide. It also had an almost immortal demonic body. The black-robed puppet just now was only at the 4th level of sky origin stage, but it took him so much effort to get rid of it. It was conceivable that an ordinary Sky Origin stage expert would not be able to deal with this black-robed puppet. I have to find the other two puppets as soon as possible to solve the crisis in Yuejian City. The situation in Yuejian City is so tense. The situation in the other cities in Zhongzhou must be the same. The evolved demonic goo puppet's destructive power and threat have increased by at least 10 times. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, and his mood became heavier and more worried. After a while, he collected his thoughts and decided to put the demonic goo into the treasure box and bring it back to the governor's mansion to study. But at this moment, the heaven-mending pearl in his mind released a dense white light, which flowed along his right arm and out of his palm. Swoosh! The mysterious white light immediately wrapped around the demonic goo and rose up fiercely like a flame. The demonic goo immediately struggled and twisted crazily, and even let out screeching sounds. It was incomparably anxious and terrified. Ji Tianqing's face was full of astonishment. He stared at the mysterious white light and watched the demonic goo struggle and churn in the white light. Soon, the powerful and evil demonic goo was corroded by the mysterious white light and melted away. After a few breaths of time, the entire demonic goo disappeared into thin air, and not even a bit of powder was left. Only then did the mysterious white light calm down and quickly retract into the heaven-mending pearl. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and muttered in disbelief. The heaven-mending pearl actually has this kind of effect? It destroyed the demonic goo so easily. Purified it? Not destroyed, but purified, just like how light dispels darkness. The mysterious white light was sacred light, and the demonic goo was evil darkness. Previously, it was the heaven-mending pearl that guided me to Moonfall Town, so I could discover this evolved demonic goo puppet. Now that the heaven-mending pearl has purified the demonic goo, could it be that the heaven-mending pearl is the nemesis of the devil race and the demonic goo? The mysterious heaven-mending pearl. Just how many more effects do you have that I don't know? Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a slight smile. His eyes were also filled with curiosity and anticipation. In order to verify the conjecture in his heart, he decided to immediately return to the governor's mansion and do something. Thus, he carried the unconscious young martial artist and turned around to leave the mountain peak. After returning to Moonfall Town, he quietly left the young martial artist in the town, and left Moonfall Town as fast as lightning, rushing back to Yuejian City. Brothers, I'm very sorry, little he has to go out for a trip, and will be delayed for about 4 days. In these 4 days, I will update 4 times a day. Chapter 858. Ji Tianqing had been busy for half the night because of the matter in Moonfall Town. When he returned to the city lord's residence, it was already dawn. The city lord's residence was silent, and the guards were still on high alert. The study in Yun Yao's residence was still lit with a dim yellow light. She was still busy in the study, bending over the table to deal with official business as if she didn't know fatigue. Ji Tianqing came to the door of the study. The guard guarding the door was about to bow to him, but he quickly gestured for him to keep quiet. Then, he silently entered the study and quietly walked behind Yun Yao. Yun Yao was still focused on reviewing the files and didn't notice his arrival at all. He revealed a gentle smile and quietly reached out his arms to hug Yun Yao's slender waist and pulled her into his arms. Yun Yao was suddenly awakened. Her body stiffened and she instinctively wanted to fight back. But she immediately reacted. After knowing that the person who came was Ji Tianqing, she immediately relaxed her vigilance. Tianqing, why are you here? What are you doing? She turned to look at Ji Tianqing with a hint of confusion in her eyes. Ji Tianqing held her hands and rubbed his cheek against her pretty face. He smiled and said, Yao Yao, you forget to rest when you're busy. My heart aches when I see you working so hard. Tell me honestly, for the past half a month, have you been working like this every day? Yun Yao stammered in response. She felt touched and warm in her heart. But she was smart and immediately saw through the clues. She stared at Ji Tianqing and asked, Tianqing, did you also not sleep last night? Where did you go last night? From the looks of it, you seem to have been in a hurry, and you even fought? Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, Yao Yao, I didn't expect that I couldn't hide this from you. You guessed right. I went to Moonfall Town last night. Moonfall Town? Yun Yao frowned slightly and asked in confusion. That's a remote town furthest away from Yuejian City. What are you doing there in the middle of the night? Ji Tianxing didn't hide it from her. He said to her through his spiritual sense, "Yao Yao, I have a surprise for you. I just found it. The heaven-mending pearl I obtained in the buried star sea is a very mysterious divine item. Its effects are very strange. This divine item has fused with my soul. Last night, it resonated with me and guided me to Moonset Town. After I rushed to Moonfall Town, I discovered a black-robed man escaping from the town. He was even carrying an unconscious young warrior." Hearing this, Yun Yao immediately revealed a surprised expression. The heaven-mending pearl actually has such a miraculous effect? That black-robed man is definitely from the devil race. He wants to plant devil goo on that young martial artist, right? Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. I thought so too at first, but he isn't from the devil race. After I chased him into a cave, I discovered that he was actually a devil goo puppet that wanted to devour the young martial artist's flesh and soul. He told Yun Yao everything that had happened. After Yun Yao heard this, she felt that it was inconceivable. Her clear eyes were filled with excitement. Tianxing, the heaven-mending pearl is actually so miraculous? It can even purify devil goo? That's right. Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a smile, the heaven-mending pearl is an ancient divine item. No one knows how powerful it is or what other effects it has. But what I can be sure of is that this divine item is most likely the nemesis of devil goo and the devil race. Although the evolved devil goo is very powerful and the devil goo puppet is very difficult to deal with, I have the heaven-mending pearl in my hands. I can quickly get rid of them. That's great. Yun Yao was also excited and said with a heart full of excitement, Tianxing, if the heaven-mending pearl is really the nemesis of the devil race, we can quickly resolve the crisis of Yujian City. The hundreds of thousands of people in Yujian City can finally be saved. Not only the people of Yujian City, but also the people of the 100 cities in the central state can finally escape the shadow of the devil goo. Ji Tianxing understood Yun Yao very well. He knew that she cared about the people and had already guessed that she would have such a reaction. Because he and Yun Yao had many similarities. This was also one of the reasons why they loved each other deeply, cherished and relied on each other. He held Yun Yao's hands and said with a solemn tone, Yao Yao, if the heaven-mending pearl is really the nemesis of the devil race, then of course everyone will be happy. We will have a way to deal with the devil goo. But this is only my guess. I need your help to verify my guess. Yun Yao quickly asked, how can I help you? Ji Tianxing said with a solemn expression, didn't you catch a lot of suspicious people and lock them in the dungeon of the city lord's mansion? Yun Yao nodded and said, that's right. Those 100 or so people are all suspicious. But we can't determine who is the devil race in disguise, so we can only lock them up. The truth is that among those 100 or so people, there are really some devil race in disguise. Ever since I ordered those people to be locked up, there are no more devil race sowing devil goo in the city. Ji Tianxing revealed a playful smile and said, all right, take me to the dungeon now. I want to see those people. If the heaven-mending pearl is really the nemesis of the devil race, maybe we can tell who is the devil race. Yun Yao revealed an expectant expression and nodded repeatedly. That's reasonable. We can't tell who is the devil race in disguise, but the heaven-mending pearl can. After we caught those 100 or so suspects, many of their family members and friends came to the city lord's mansion every day to plead for mercy, asking the city lord's mansion to release their loved ones. But most of those people are the rich and powerful families in the city. City Lord Yi has to deal with those people every day, so he has long been annoyed and exhausted. Tianxing, if you can tell who is innocent and who is the devil race, that would be great. After saying that, Yun Yao brought Ji Tianxing out of the study and walked towards the backyard of the city lord's mansion. In the spacious but cold backyard, it seemed to be defenseless, but in fact, there were many hidden sentries. The entrance to the dungeon was under a stone sculpture in the corner of the backyard, protected by the Tianyuan array. Yun Yao used a secret technique to open the array. A crack suddenly appeared on the base of the stone sculpture, and a door opened. Behind the stone door was a dark passageway that led to the dungeon deep in the ground. Yun Yao brought Ji Tianxing through the stone door and walked down the stone stairs. After a quarter of an hour, the two people walked to the end of the passage and entered the dungeon. The city lord's mansion's dungeon was very large, like an underground palace, divided into upper and lower levels. Each level had 2 passageways. On both sides of the passageways were rows of prison cells. The entrance to the dungeon and each passageway were heavily guarded. The security was very tight. Furthermore, the entire dungeon was protected by the Tianyuan array. Even if there was an earthquake or powerhouses fighting, it was impossible to destroy the dungeon. Chapter 859. More than 100 suspects were locked up on the first floor of the dungeon. There were 200 cells on the first floor of the dungeon, and they were almost all occupied by these people. Ji Tianqing wanted to check the people in each cell one by one. He wouldn't wrongly accuse an innocent person, but he wouldn't let go of a single devil either. He brought Yun Yao and the guard commander along the passage and started to check. The guard commander opened the door of the first cell. He stepped into the cell first and looked at the imprisoned person with a dignified gaze. In the cold and dark cell, there was a young man wearing a long brocade robe. He was chained to the wall with cold iron chains, and his hands and feet were shackled. This person had been imprisoned for half a month. His mental state was a little sluggish, and his emotions were very agitated. Seeing Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao enter the secret cell, this person immediately struggled and shouted with an urgent tone, "Master, I'm innocent. Let me go, I beg you. Let me go quickly." Yun Yao was silent and didn't say anything. She quietly looked at Ji Tianqing and waited for his answer. Ji Tianqing stared at the young man expressionlessly. He used the pure heart Dharma eye to check his aura and used the power of the heaven-mending orb to observe his soul. This person's aura was normal, and his soul didn't have any abnormalities. The heaven-mending orb also didn't have any abnormal reaction. Therefore, Ji Tianqing brought Yun Yao and the guard commander away and entered the second cell. The person imprisoned in this cell was a middle-aged man. Ji Tianqing carefully observed for a while and didn't find any abnormalities. Then, he checked the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth cells one after another. The people imprisoned in each cell were different. There were old and young, men and women, aristocrats and commoners. But when they saw Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, they would emotionally shout that they were innocent, or cry and beg for mercy. Ji Tianqing used the pure heart Dharma eye to observe while using the heaven-mending orb to check their souls. However, he did not find anything unusual even after checking the people in a few cells. Yun Yao was a little worried and secretly transmitted her voice to him. "Tianqing, could it be that the devil race's disguise technique is so brilliant that even the heaven-mending bead can't see through it? Or is it that the heaven-mending pearl can only sense the aura of demonic insects, but not the aura of devils?" Ji Tianqing did not bat an eyelid. He calmly comforted her. "Yao Yao, don't worry. There are more than 100 people in the prison, and only a few of them are demons in disguise. Be patient and wait. I believe the heaven-mending orb will not disappoint us." Unknowingly, an hour had passed. The guard commander opened 24 cells in a row, and Ji Tianqing also checked 24 suspects in a row. In the end, everyone was normal and no abnormalities were found. When Ji Tianqing stepped into the 25th cell, an inexplicable feeling rose in his heart. In this dark and gloomy cell, there was a middle-aged man dressed in a sapphire blue robe, dressed like a wealthy merchant. This person had oily hair and a powdered face. He was stout and had a few precious gemstone rings on his fingers. He looked quite noble. Even though he was chained up with cold iron chains and his hands and feet were shackled, he did not look disheveled at all. He looked very calm and graceful. Seeing Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao enter the cell, this person did not cry or beg for mercy. He calmly said, "Two sirs, I have already said it countless times. This one is a merchant through and through. I have always been doing business honestly. It is impossible for me to have anything to do with the devil race. Two sirs, you have already locked me up for so long. How are you going to deal with me? You have to give me an explanation, right? This one still has a wife and children to take care of." The middle-aged merchant's bearing was calm and steady. He was not anxious at all. His words were also very pertinent, making people not doubt him at all. However, after Ji Tianqing observed him for a moment, his eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a cold smile. "How can a beast like you, who is worse than a pig and a dog, be worthy of a wife and children?" When his cold laughter sounded, Yun Yao was startled for a moment, but she immediately understood what he meant. The middle-aged merchant's body stiffened. His face was immediately filled with anger. He angrily shouted, "This sire, no matter who you are, you should not insult me like this. I am a cloth merchant in the city. Everyone in the streets and alleys knows my background. How can you accuse me of nothing? No matter who you are, if you want to slander me, you have to show evidence. Otherwise, I want to see the city lord and let city lord Yi be the judge. Seeing him refute with such righteous words, Ji Tianxing's cold smile deepened. The guard leader hesitated for a moment, then whispered to Ji Tianxing, "Young Master Ji, this is the cloth merchant. Lord Du he is a famous philanthropist in our city. Every year, he gives out porridge and food to the poor people in the villages and towns. Moreover, Lord Du and City Lord Yi are old friends. He has donated a lot of food and money to the City Lord Manor. You see." The guard leader's words were obviously reminding Ji Tianxing that this Lord Du was a good person. He should not wrongly accuse him. Moreover, Lord Du and City Lord Yi were good friends. He hoped that Ji Tianxing would give City Lord Yi some face and not embarrass Lord Du too much. Ji Tianxing turned his head to look at the guard leader. With a smile that was not a smile, he said, "So, you are pleading for him? Or, do you want to guarantee his innocence?" This subordinate does not dare. The guard leader was shocked. He knelt down in fear and trepidation, afraid that Ji Tianxing would offend him. Ji Tianxing ignored him and looked straight at Lord Du. He sneered. "Hee, the demon clan's methods are getting better and better. Your acting skills are really amazing. However, this is useless in front of me. You want me to show evidence? Fine." As his voice fell, he stepped in front of Lord Du and suddenly stretched out his right hand. Swoosh! He activated the power of the Heaven Mending Pearl and released a mysterious white light that enveloped Lord Du's body. Instantly, Lord Du was wrapped tightly in the white light. The mysterious white light surged like a rising flame, releasing a mysterious and powerful force. Lord Du's entire body trembled. His brows furrowed and he let out a painful groan. He growled, "Brat, what are you trying to do? You have no evidence at all and slandered me. You even dare to use torture on me?" Ji Tianxing did not speak. He moved his right hand to control the mysterious white light and purify Lord Du's body. Instantly, Lord Du's body changed and actually started to twist and contort. His clothes were normal but his body looked like it was being roasted. It was purplish-black and emitted wisps of black fog. That rising black fog was not unfamiliar to everyone. It was the demonic qi unique to the demon clan. When the demonic qi continuously appeared, Lord Du's body twitched and contorted as he let out heart-wrenching screams. In just a few breaths, his body began to crack and expand, growing to a height of more than 3 meters. In the blink of an eye, he turned from a pot-bellied human man into a 3-meter-tall demon clan man with a purplish-black body. No matter how miraculous his disguise was or how deeply he hid the demon clan's true body, it could not resist the purification of the heaven-mending pearl. Under the sacred white light, his demonic qi was quickly purified and he immediately revealed his true appearance. When Yunyao saw this, her clear eyes revealed a gratified smile. Reality proved that Ji Tianxing's guess was right. The heaven-mending pearl was really the demon clan's nemesis. When the guard commander saw this, he was instantly dumbfounded. When he regained his senses, he was so scared that his face was pale and he was sweating profusely. He knelt on the ground and hurriedly kowtowed to Ji Tianxing to beg for mercy. "Please forgive me, young Master Ji." This subordinate was confused for a moment. "Please spare my life." Chapter 860. The guard leader kowtowed like he was pounding garlic, scared out of his wits. He was just defending and pleading for mercy for old Master Du, but in the blink of an eye, old Master Du had revealed his true form and turned into a ferocious demon. If Ji Tianxing charged him with the crime of being an accomplice of the demon race, it would not be a problem to execute him on the spot. However, Ji Tianxing ignored him and continued to control the sacred white light to purify the demon race man's demon qi. "Ah! Ji Tianxing! You lowly reptile, bastard! You will die a horrible death. You dare to go against His Majesty the Demon Emperor? You will die without a doubt. Your death is coming soon." The demon race man screamed at the top of his lungs and let out an angry roar. He struggled with all his might, and the cold iron chains on his body and the shackles on his hands and feet were all rattled by him. The sturdy and tough iron chains began to twist and deform, and were about to break. However, the demon race man was wrapped in the sacred white light, and no matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. The demon chi in his body surged out wildly, and his flesh and blood burned, quickly evaporating into nothingness.
In a short span of 20 breaths, he was completely purified by the sacred white light, and disappeared without a trace. Not even a trace of powder was left.
Silence returned to the prison cell. Ji Tianqing kept the sacred white light back into the heaven-mending pearl, and turned to look at Yun Yao, and said with some emotion, Yao Yao, fortunately, after you came to Yuejian City, you implemented all kinds of strict measures. The demon race is too cunning. Just like this old Master Du, he was taken over by the demon race not long ago. But he hid too well, and even City Lord Yi was deceived. I'm afraid no one in the entire Yuejian City can see through him. If you didn't give the order to capture him, City Lord Yi wouldn't have been able to capture this person, and this person is still planting demon insects in the city. Yun Yao nodded and said with a solemn expression, That's right, we can only blame the demon race for being too despicable, too vicious, and impossible to guard against. Fortunately, you came to help me. Yuejian City is saved. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and led her and the guard commander out of the cell. He then continued to examine the remaining suspects. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing checked the remaining 100 or so suspects one by one. Most of the people were innocent, but he still found out that 4 people were disguised as demons. When he approached the disguised devil, the heaven-mending orb would have an abnormal reaction. He only needed to activate the power of the heaven-mending orb and use the sacred white light to envelop the demons. Then, he would be able to break through the demons' disguise and completely purify them. After he finished inspecting everyone, Yun Yao ordered the guard commander to release the remaining 100 or so innocent people. The leader of the guards hurriedly carried out the order. He led the guards to open one cell after another and unlocked the chains and shackles of the innocent prisoners. Immediately, the dungeon erupted into cheers. Countless people were crying tears of joy and gratitude. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left the dungeon and returned to the city lord's residence. As soon as the two of them returned to their residence, a guard hurriedly came to report the news. Reporting to young Master Ji, young Lady Yun, the city lord has an urgent matter to discuss with you. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a dignified expression, Bring him to the study. The guard hurriedly retreated to pass on the news. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had just sat down in the study when City Lord Yi entered the study with an anxious expression and bowed. Greetings to young Master Ji. Greetings to young Lady Yun. This subordinate has an urgent matter to report. Yun Yao nodded slightly and said with a calm expression, City Lord Yi, what's the matter that makes you so anxious? City Lord Yi hurriedly reported the truth. Young Lady Yun, this subordinate just received news that last night, an expert invaded Moonfall Town. I don't know who fought near Moonfall Town and destroyed a mountain in the east of the town. The city guards stationed in Moonfall Town found the remains of the demons in the ruins, as well as many corpses. Hearing this, Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing looked at each other and revealed a knowing expression. Yun Yao raised her hand slightly and signaled City Lord Yi to stop. City Lord Yi, there's no need to say any more. I already knew about this. Last night, young Master Ji used a secret technique and predicted that Moonfall Town was in danger, so he rushed over to investigate the situation. Young Master Ji found a demonic parasite puppet in the town that was robbing young martial artists to devour their flesh and soul, so he started chasing after it. The mountain in the east of the town was destroyed because young Master Ji killed the demonic parasite puppet, so there's no need to make a fuss. That demonic parasite puppet was one of the 3 puppets that had been hiding outside the town, and it was very powerful. However, that demonic parasite puppet was already killed by young Master Ji, and the young martial artists were also rescued by young Master Ji. City Lord Yi was stunned on the spot. He looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief, and his eyes were filled with excitement and admiration. Young Master Ji actually predicted that Moonfall Town would be in danger? Heavens, that's too unbelievable. That demonic parasite puppet had been on the run for a long time, and its strength had already evolved to become extremely powerful. Back then, young Master Yun Yao and her subordinates worked together, and even led a large group of elite experts, but they still couldn't capture it. Young Master Ji, you're simply invincible and unparalleled. It's really a blessing for me and the people of Moonfall Town to have you in charge. You're the savior of Moonfall Town. City Lord Ye's strength had reached the 4th level of Sky Origin Stage, and he was also a powerhouse that had been famous for decades. However, he and Yun Yao worked together, but they still couldn't capture that demonic parasite puppet. Instead, That demonic parasite puppet slaughtered a large group of guards, and they had to flee in the end. He knew very well how powerful the evolved demonic parasite puppet was. That was why he was so shocked when he heard that Ji Tianqing had taken care of that demonic parasite puppet so easily. He had been troubled by this for half a month, and Ji Tianqing had found that demonic parasite puppet on the first day of his arrival in Moonfall Town, and easily killed it. How could he believe this? If Yun Yao hadn't said it herself, he wouldn't have believed it at all. Ji Tianqing was so flattered and worshipped by City Lord Yi, but he was neither arrogant nor impatient. He calmly waved his hand and said, "City Lord Yi, it's still too early to talk about this. If we really want to solve the crisis of Moonfall Town, we have to find the other 2 demonic parasite puppets as soon as possible and get rid of them. Moreover, after dealing with those 2 demonic parasite puppets, Moonfall Town must continue to be under martial law, and strictly prevent the demonic parasite clan from sneaking into the town and continuing to sow demonic parasites." City Lord Yi hurriedly nodded in agreement. Young Master Ji is right. This subordinate will do his best to protect Moonfall Town as ordered. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, gave him a few words of encouragement, and let him leave. After that, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao returned to their rooms to rest. Moonfall Town was peaceful for the entire day. Ji Tianqing didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, and had been meditating in his room the whole time. It wasn't until late at night that he suddenly sensed that the heaven-mending orb in his mind had a reaction. It lit up with a dense white light, and a warm feeling came from it. Another demonic parasite puppet has appeared, just in time. Chapter 861. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing left the city lord's mansion and flew into the night sky, rushing north as fast as lightning. The heaven-mending orb in his mind faintly emitted a mysterious response, guiding him to the north. With last night's experience, he could naturally guess that there must be a demonic venomous insect puppet causing trouble somewhere in the north of Yujian City. Not long after, he flew out of Yujian City and flew towards the mountains in the north. There were many villages and small towns scattered among the rolling mountains. Under the curtain of night, the mountains were like sleeping dragons lying on the ground. The mountains were quiet and gloomy. Only some villages and small towns were lit up with starry lights. Ji Tianqing flew continuously for an hour, crossing over a dozen villages and 2 small towns before entering the depths of the mountains. The warm feeling in his mind became more and more intense, and the reaction of the heaven-mending orb also gradually intensified. It was clear that he was getting closer and closer to the scene of the incident. After a quarter of an hour, when he crossed over a mountain, he saw a low slope behind the mountain. There was a small village on the slope, situated between the mountains and lush forests. This village that occupied half of the slope was originally a place of beautiful scenery with birds chirping and flowers blooming. It was as peaceful as a paradise. However, at this moment, the village was in a hubbub of voices. Flames were burning everywhere, and heart-wrenching screams and shouts could be heard. Hundreds of figures were running around the village in a panic. They were either running for their lives or calling for help. There were also many commoners who took out their weapons and gathered together, shouting as they rushed towards the center of the village. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky above the village, and after looking around, he clearly saw the situation in the village. There was a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe leading 2 strong men in armor. They were rampaging through the village, crazily slaughtering the commoners. Their strength was not ordinary. Their figures shuttled back and forth as fast as lightning, constantly swinging their weapons and chopping the weak villagers to the ground. Miserable screams were constantly heard, and dark red blood splattered in the night sky. It was a ghastly sight under the illumination of the flames. After the 3 crazy executioners slaughtered the people, they opened their mouths and spat out dark red blood mist, which covered the corpses on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the flesh and blood of those miserable corpses melted and disintegrated, turning into white skeletons. There was no doubt that the 3 executioners who were wantonly slaughtering were the puppets that had been poisoned by the demonic goo. The red-robed man was the leader of the group. He was at the sky origin stage. The 2 armored puppets seemed to be his subordinates and were only at the origin core realm. However, the people in the village were all weak in martial arts, and there wasn't even a Yuan Dan expert. In front of the 3 demonic goo puppets, the thousands of villagers were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. In just 10 breaths of time, more than 100 civilians were slaughtered. Their flesh, blood, and souls were devoured and turned into skeletons.
The remaining citizens were scared out of their wits. They no longer dared to resist and fled in all directions. However, they simply could not escape the slaughter of the 3 demonic venomous puppets. Especially the red-robed man. With a wave of his hand, he sent out a bloodlight that covered the sky and earth, destroying several houses and buildings into ruins. The civilians who could not escape in time were instantly minced into meat paste by the bloodlight and scattered among the ruins. The pungent smell of blood filled the night sky. An atmosphere of fear and despair enveloped the entire village. Ji Tianqing saw the scene in the village clearly and immediately looked coldly at the red-robed man. He could tell that the red-robed man was an evolved demonic goo puppet. Not only was he powerful, but he was also very intelligent. The 2 armored demonic goo puppets were most likely new puppets created after the demonic goo in the red-robed man's body split apart. Damned bastards! Death is not to be regretted. Ji Tianqing bellowed with a murderous aura. He immediately waved his hand and shot out 2 golden sword lights towards the 2 armored puppets.
Swoosh! Swoosh!
The 2 demonic goo puppets were brandishing their swords and sabers, slashing more than a dozen civilians to the ground and devouring their flesh and souls. The golden sword beams suddenly slashed through the dark night sky and erupted with unparalleled sharpness. Before the 2 demonic goo puppets could react, they were hit by the golden sword beams. With 2 muffled bangs, the 2 of them were sent flying by the golden sword light. Their bodies exploded with a bang, exploding into countless pieces. 2 deep pits were also blasted into the ground by the sword beams, splashing mud all over the sky. After Ji Tianqing killed the 2 demonic goo puppets in one move, he turned his head to look at the red-robed man. However, the 2 demonic goo puppets that had been blasted into pieces were not dead yet. The 2 of them turned into 2 black mists and quickly flew towards the red-robed man. The red-robed man immediately stopped killing and looked up at Ji Tianqing in the sky. When he saw Ji Tianqing flapping his golden wings and standing in the sky with a cold expression, he immediately narrowed his eyes and revealed a fearful expression. Ji Tianqing also saw his appearance clearly. His eyes were scarlet like fire, his skin was dark purple, and his wide mouth was stained with blood. He looked like a ferocious demon. Without a doubt, this was the evolved demonic goo puppet, a cruel and cunning demon.
Demon die!
Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice.
Without hesitation, he waved his hand and shot out a huge flaming sword light towards the red-robed man.
Crimson Dragon Flash. The 10-meter-long flaming sword soared with intense flames like a flaming divine dragon with extremely violent power. In an instant, the Crimson Dragon Flash descended from the sky and arrived in front of the red-robed man, about to drown his figure. His expression suddenly changed, and he retreated as fast as lightning. Moreover, he also controlled the 2 black mists to block the Crimson Dragon Flash's attack head-on.
Boom!
With a loud bang, the Crimson Dragon Flash blasted the 2 demonic mists and completely dissipated them. A 100-meter-wide crater was also blasted out on the ground, splashing dust and flames into the sky. The 2 ordinary puppets were completely destroyed, but the red-robed man escaped the disaster. He took the opportunity to escape from the village. His whole body was covered in bloody flames as he flew into the sky and fled into the depths of the mountains. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned and a cold murderous intent flashed in his eyes. This demonic goo puppet is stronger than the one last night, and more cunning and vicious. However, don't even think about escaping tonight. You'll definitely die. He whispered in a low voice and immediately turned into a golden flame, like a meteor streaking across the night sky, chasing after the red-robed man. After a while, the 2 of them were far away from the village and entered the depths of the mountains. There were mountains in a radius of dozens of miles, and there was no one nearby. This area was just right for fighting. Ji Tianqing suddenly sped up and quickly closed the distance between him and the red-robed man. Golden light gushed out from his body and condensed into a 100-meter-long heaven-splitting sword. It transformed into a white tiger phantom and fiercely attacked the red-robed man. Chapter 862. White Tiger Sacred Sword. The dazzling golden heaven-splitting sword was enveloped by the mountain-like white tiger projection as it charged toward the red-robed man. The red-robed man had slaughtered thousands of civilians and devoured countless souls. He was as powerful as a Sky Origin Stage 6 cultivator. However, when he felt the horrifying power of the white tiger sacred sword, his expression changed. His scarlet eyes were filled with fear.
He was like a normal human being. He had intelligence and thought, and he knew how to be afraid. When the white tiger sacred sword approached him, his body emitted a bloody light. It turned into hundreds of bloody light pillars and scattered in all directions. Apparently, this was his secret skill. He could turn his body into hundreds of bloody light pillars to minimize the damage.
Boom!
The white tiger sacred sword arrived brazenly and instantly shattered more than 10 blood-colored light pillars. The light pillars shattered and turned into bloody light fragments. They splashed in all directions and dyed the night sky dark red. However, the other 80 bloody light pillars managed to escape. They scattered and escaped into the mountains, trying to escape underground.
Humph! How cunning!
The white tiger's shadow dissipated, and Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He snorted coldly with a cold expression. Without a doubt, this demonic parasite puppet was more difficult to deal with than the one last night. If Yun Yao and Mayor Yi were here, they wouldn't be able to deal with this puppet. They might even be killed by it instead. However, in front of Ji Tianqing, this demonic parasite puppet wouldn't be able to escape no matter how powerful it was.
Shatter the mountains and rivers.
His figure flashed rapidly in the night sky. He kept teleporting and releasing tens of thousands of golden sword light pillars. They covered the mountains and rivers within 10 miles. He hadn't reached the soul refining stage yet, so he couldn't use his soul territory to suppress the red-robed man. However, when he used the shatter the mountains and rivers, he turned the area within 10 miles into a sword light territory. It was a different method but the same effect.
Boom!
In the next moment, tens of thousands of sword light pillars stabbed into the ground at the same time. They exploded with the strongest power. An earth-shattering boom reverberated through the night sky, reverberating intensely within a radius of 100 miles. The mountains and rivers within a radius of 5 kilometers were instantly turned into ruins by the sword light, and a huge crater appeared. The entire area had turned into a world of golden light. It was so bright and dazzling that one couldn't look at it directly. Endless dust flew high into the sky, covering the night sky. The 80 or so streaks of blood-red light formed by the demonic venomous goo puppets had just burrowed into the mountain and underground, and before they could escape, they were blasted into smithereens by Shatter Mountain and River. A moment later, when the golden light in the sky gradually extinguished and the endless dust gradually dispersed, tens of thousands of bloody light fragments appeared. The dense fragments of the bloody light gathered in the deep pit, forming a dark purple figure that was lying in the big pit, trembling. That figure was the red-robed man. His red robe had long been shredded into powder and scattered among the ruins. His clothes did not cover his body, and his skin was dark purple and covered in fur. He was almost no different from a demon. Moreover, his entire body was covered with hideous wounds. There were more than 100 of them. It was as if he had been dismembered and was almost cut into pieces. What was strange was that black demon bones were exposed in the dense wounds, but no blood flowed out. His blood seemed to have solidified, and his body was also incomparably tough. He did not turn into scraps even after suffering such heavy injuries and was still alive. Ji Tianqing stood above the deep pit and looked down at the demonic venomous goo puppet in the pit with a grave expression. Its vitality is actually so strong. As expected of a demonic venomous goo puppet. Even if an ordinary 7th-level Sky Origin expert came, they probably wouldn't be able to do anything to it. If it is allowed to continue killing civilians to increase its strength, who knows what kind of terrifying demonic creature it will become. He slowly raised his right hand and was about to release the mysterious black hole to envelop that demonic venomous goo puppet. But at this moment, that demonic venomous goo puppet's entire body burned with raging flames and turned into a streak of dark red light.
Swoosh!
It did not hesitate to burn the flesh and souls that it devoured to obtain incomparably powerful strength. It instantly burrowed into the ground and escaped nearly 1,000 meters away.
Damn it!
Still trying to escape with such injuries? Ji Tianqing's expression changed. He immediately used the Earth Emperor shield. His body turned into a streak of yellow light and burrowed into the ground. He began a pursuit underground and followed closely behind that streak of dark red light. He ran into the depths of the mountains. No matter how fast that streak of red light accelerated, it could not shake him off. He chased with all his might for an hour. He passed through mountain ranges and rivers and ran wildly into the depths of the mountains for 500 kilometers. Finally, that streak of red light became dimmer and dimmer. Its strength was also gradually depleted.
Ji Tianqing finally caught up to it and rapidly closed the distance between them.
Swoosh!
The dark red light burst forth with its last bit of strength and desperately burrowed into a 10,000 feet tall mountain.
It entered a spacious cave. Ji Tianqing followed without hesitation. He also broke through a layer of black fog and demonic cheese obstruction and arrived at the cave. This cave was located in the belly of the mountain. It was very spacious and had a radius of 1,000 meters. The cave was dark and gloomy. It was filled with eerie demonic chi. The temperature was also as cold as ice. The ceiling of the cave was inlaid with dark red blood crystals. They emitted a scarlet glow and brought a trace of hazy light to the cave. Ji Tianqing revealed his true form. He stood in the cold cave and looked around with a sharp gaze. He saw that an altar was built in the cave with black boulders and various gemstones. A blood-red light the size of a water tank floated at the top of the altar. It was like a light ball the size of a millstone. It was slowly rotating.
In the corners of the cave there were a few secret rooms.
They were sealed with stone doors and formations. There was no doubt that this was a demonic cave. It was the lair of a demon king expert. Ji Tianqing looked around the cave and saw two figures. One of them was a demonic venomous puppet covered with sword wounds. It was the red-robed man who had desperately escaped to this place. At this time, his strength was almost exhausted, and his body was slumped under the altar, gasping for breath. He greedily absorbed the blood-red light ball at the top of the altar. He quickly recovered his strength and healed the wounds on his body.
In the corner of the cave, there was a tall and sturdy young man in a brocade robe. The young man was dressed like a rich young master. He had an extraordinary aura and was at Sky Origin Stage 6. However, he had already become a demonic venomous puppet. He was a puppet that had evolved. His skin was dark purple. His eyes were as red as fire. His wide mouth was stained with blood and two sharp fangs were exposed. Even so, Ji Tianqing was still able to recognize him based on his figure, appearance, and clothes. He was the eldest young master of the Chao clan in Yuejian City, Chao Jingfeng. The remaining two demonic venomous puppets are together. Not only did the demonic venomous puppets evolve and become stronger, but they also have intelligence. They can even split and reproduce to create new puppets. They can even work together. However, this saves me the trouble of searching everywhere. I can catch both of you in one fell swoop. Chapter 863. When Ji Tianqing looked at Chao Jingfeng was sizing him up as well.
Roar!
Chao Jingfeng seemed to have sensed a great threat.
He opened his mouth and let out a threatening roar.
He stared at Ji Tianqing. His scarlet eyes were filled with fear and hatred. Wisps of black gas seeped out of his body, causing his aura to become even colder and darker. At this moment, a secret chamber at the corner of the cave suddenly opened.
Swoosh! Swoosh!
Two tall figures rushed out of the secret chamber. They held heavy swords in their hands as they charged toward Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. The two devil clansmen were 3 meters tall. They looked ferocious and had a ferocious aura. However, both of them were ordinary devil generals. Their strength was only at the 8th or 9th level of the Origin Core stage. When the two of them charged toward Ji Tianqing fearlessly with blood-red flames on their bodies, Ji Tianqing merely raised his right hand casually and flicked 2 golden sword rays from his fingers.
Swoosh! Swoosh!
The 5-foot-long golden sword light was extremely sharp and fierce, and its power was extremely violent. Along with 2 muffled bangs, the 2 devil generals were hit by the golden sword rays. Purple blood splattered out. 2 ferocious heads flew into the air and fell to the ground. The headless corpses of the 2 devil generals ran for more than 10 meters before they were exhausted and fell to the ground. With their strength, they could not even get close to Ji Tianqing before they were killed in just one move. Ji Tianqing did not relax at all. He frowned and looked at the secret chamber at the corner of the cave. He knew very well that since there were devil generals in this devil cave, there must be a devil king guarding it. As expected, the stone door of the second secret chamber opened. A tall and sturdy male demon walked out. He was as tall and powerful as a black bear. The man looked ferocious. His dark purple skin was covered with tattoos of ferocious devils and devil beasts. He held a black axe that was the size of a door in his hand. He walked into the cave with heavy steps and looked at Ji Tianqing viciously.
Hee!
Boy, how dare you barge into my devil cave? You're seeking your own death. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly.
He sized him up and saw that his strength was around the 7th level of the heavenly origin stage.
He pointed at the devil parasite puppet and Chao Jingfeng. He asked in a deep voice, "You're the one who killed these 2 devil parasites, right? Are you here to bring disaster to Yujian City?" The Demon King grinned.
His bell-sized eyes flashed with a ferocious light. He sneered, "Not bad, you reptile, you're not too stupid.
I'm the Devil King of the Sand Tribe.
The hundreds of thousands of human reptiles in Yujian City will all become tributes to His Majesty the Demon Emperor. You Devil King of the heavenly origin stage of the Devil King of his blood."
Ji Tianqing narrowed his eyes when he heard what the Devil King of the Dust Sand said.
He looked at the blood-red light at the top of the altar. He immediately understood that the blood-red light was the blood and souls of countless people. They were going to be sacrificed to the ancient diabolical emperor. The Devil King of the Dust Sand did not waste his breath on him. He waved the axe in his hand and ordered the 2 devil parasite puppets.
"What are you waiting for? Kill him for this prince. This boy has the strength of the heavenly origin stage and is so young. He must be someone important. Devour his blood and soul and send his body back to Yujian City. I'm going to give Yujian City a warning." The devil parasite puppet heard the order from the Devil King of the Dust Sand and jumped up. It turned into a blood-red light and pounced on Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly as a cold light flashed in his eyes.
He raised his hand and unleashed a huge golden sword.
Water split.
The 10-meter-long golden sword instantly struck the demonic venomous puppet with unparalleled power, splitting it into 2 halves.
Its corpse fell to the ground. Chao Jingfeng's intelligence was much higher than that of the devil parasite puppet. He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he attacked from the side when Ji Tianqing was using water split.
Roar. Roar.
He let out a furious roar as he waved his palms and shot out 2 blood-red light beams, which condensed into 2 10-meter-long blood-red light blades and slashed towards Ji Tianqing.
The blood-red light lit up the entire cave. The pungent smell of blood was nauseating. A strong wind blew in the cave. The sand and stones on the ground were blown away. Ji Tianqing was prepared.
He waved his left hand and a red fire came out.
It turned into a huge flaming palm. Burning sky palm.
Bam!
The destructive flaming palm smashed the 2 blood-red blades and hit Chao Jingfeng. No matter how powerful Chao Jingfeng was, his body was crushed by the flaming palm. He exploded into pieces.
Boom!
The flaming palm wrapped around his body and slammed into the wall of the cave.
There was an earth-shattering boom.
In an instant, the huge cave with a radius of 1,000 meters was destroyed by the giant flaming palm, and it immediately collapsed. The entire 1,000-zhang-tall mountain began to shake violently. Numerous gullies appeared on its surface, and rumbled loudly as it collapsed into a pile of ruins. The earth quaked and the mountains shook, and the ripples spread for dozens of miles. However, Chao Jingfeng was still alive even though he was smashed into pieces. He turned into a blood-red light and flew out from the falling rocks. He flew into the dark night sky. The Lord of Dust and Sand roared angrily. His body lit up with blood-red light. He rushed out of the cave and flew into the sky. Only the devil parasite puppet that was split in half was too weak to escape. It was buried in the ruins.
Swoosh!
Ji Tianqing was covered in golden light. He flew into the night sky above the ruins.
Just as he stood in the sky, he heard the Lord of Dust and Sand roar. The blood-red blades were coming at him. "Little bastard, I have underestimated you. If I don't cut you into pieces tonight, I will not be able to vent my anger."
The Lord of Dust and Sand held his axe with both hands.
He slashed out hundreds of blood-red blades with all his might.
They sealed off the sky around Ji Tianqing. He was about to be drowned by the blood-red light.
At this critical moment, he activated his ethereal force to form a shield to protect himself.
He then released a golden sword. Metal slash.
The golden sword was hundreds of meters long. It had the terrifying power to split the sky and earth. It shattered dozens of blood-red blades and hit the Lord of Dust and Sand.
Bam!
The Lord of Dust and Sand was sent flying 5 miles away. He crashed into a mountain and created a huge hole in the mountain. The power of the Metal Emperor Slash did not diminish. It struck the mountain and split it in half.
"Humph, you idiot!"
Ji Tianqing snorted in disdain.
Just as he was about to give chase and kill the Dust Sand Demon King, he suddenly stopped. Suddenly, the blood-red light that Chao Jingfeng had turned into a blood-red canopy that covered thousands of meters.
It was coming at him. Swoosh.
The night sky within a 1,000-meter radius was immediately enveloped by the dark red light. Chapter 864. The dark red light that Chao Jingfeng had transformed into quickly turned into a boundless blood sea. Ji Tianqing was surrounded by the blood sea. All he could see was the dark red color of blood. He could not see anything else. He waved his palms and unleashed a dozen golden swords that slashed at the blood sea. However, the blood sea spun rapidly and swallowed the golden swords. It was not hurt at all. He was trapped in the blood sea and could not get out. At the same time, the demon king of dust crawled out from the ruins of a mountain not far away. He was covered in demonic blood. There was a half-meter-long wound on his chest that almost cut him in half. His combat power was greatly weakened after being severely injured. His heart was filled with rage and murderous intent. He flew into the night sky and stared at the dark red blood sea with hatred. He cursed. "Damn you, little bastard. You're so powerful that you can hurt me. No, this person must be the emperor's son from the imperial residence. I can't fight with him. I must leave as soon as possible and find a chance to take revenge in the future." The demon king of dust had witnessed Ji Tianqing's power. He knew that he was no match for Ji Tianqing. No matter how powerful the puppet Chao Jingfeng was and how fearless he could only hold Ji Tianqing back for a while. He took the opportunity to escape without hesitation. He flew deep into the mountains. Just when he was about 10 miles away, an earth-shattering explosion came from the night sky behind him. Boom! Along with a deafening explosion, an azure pillar of lightning brazenly broke through the dark red sea of blood and tore apart the dark night sky. The lightning beam pierced through the night sky as if it was really a lightning strike. The blood sea that Chao Jingfeng had transformed into was shattered by the lightning beam. It shattered into pieces of bloody light. The lightning beam then landed on the ground and turned a 1,000-foot-tall mountain into a charred ruin. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had used his thunder spiritual eyes to release a lightning beam that could destroy the world. No one could stop him. Swoosh! He was covered in a dazzling golden light. He pierced through the bloody light fragments and chased after the demon king of dust like a shooting star. When Demon King Dust Sands saw the lightning beam break through the night sky, he was stunned. His eyes were filled with shock. When he saw Ji Tianqing rushing over, he came back to his senses and hurriedly turned around to flee in panic. However, before he could run far, Ji Tianqing caught up with him. Demon-slaying sword. Ji Tianqing roared and cast the art of White Heart Demon Suppression. He unleashed a giant sword made of holy golden light and attacked the Demon King of Dust and Sand. The holy golden light illuminated the night sky, dispelling the darkness within a radius of 20 miles. Demon King Dust Sand sensed the holy power, and his expression changed drastically. He tried his best to unleash his blood flame to avoid this fatal attack. However, the demon-slaying sword had already locked onto his aura. Even though he had moved 10 miles away, the demon-vanquishing sword still changed its direction and struck him hard. Boom! The sacred demon-slaying giant sword cleaved him in half on the spot, and his body exploded into countless pieces. Demon King Dust Sand's body immediately started to burn, turning into countless pieces of dark red light. He still wanted to reform. However, Ji Tianqing did not give him the chance to do so. He immediately chased after him and used another demon sealing palm. Golden light poured out from both of his palms, forming a giant golden light palm that slammed onto the dark red light. Boom! Another loud explosion occurred, and the sky full of bloodlight was shattered by the demon sealing palm. It turned into streaks of bloodlight and disappeared from the world. The Demon King Dust Sand, who was at Sky Origin Stage 7, was killed just like that. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time. He quickly turned around and flew away to chase after Chao Jingfeng. When he returned to the battlefield, he realized that Chao Jingfeng had already escaped to the southeast. In the ruins of the collapsed mountain, there was a demon venomous insect puppet. It was the man in the red robe that he had been chasing. This demon venomous insect puppet had been cleaved in half, but now it had merged back together and was quickly recovering from its injuries. Ji Tianqing went into the ruins and captured him. He used the mysterious black hole on his right palm to suck out the demon venomous insect puppet from his body. Next, The heaven-patching orb released a sacred white light that covered the corpse and the demon-venomous insect puppet. Soon, the corpse and the demon-venomous insect puppet were purified. After taking care of this demon-venomous insect puppet, Ji Tianqing headed to the southeast. Chao Jingfeng's body was destroyed, leaving behind only a dark red light. He was running for his life. However, as he was running, he left behind a large amount of demonic qi in the sky. Ji Tianqing activated his pure heart Dharma eye, and could clearly see the demonic qi in the sky. He followed the direction of the demonic qi and chased after Chao Jingfeng for over 100 miles. Chao Jingfeng turned into a dark red light, like a giant sword made of bloodlight, and was running in the sky. Ji Tianqing chased after him like a shooting star. When he was about 100 meters away, he used his secret skill. Demon-slaying sword. The dazzling golden light instantly condensed into a sacred golden sword that was 100 meters long. It carried a vast amount of power and charged toward Chao Jingfeng. Chao Jingfeng immediately sped up. He changed his direction and moved 1,000 meters away, trying to avoid the attack of the demon-slaying sword. However, the demon-slaying sword locked onto his aura and followed him closely. Bam! Amidst the dull sound of collision, the demon-slaying sword hit Chao Jingfeng hard. It shattered the giant sword into pieces of bloodlight that filled the sky. The thousands of pieces of bloodlight still wanted to gather and reform. However, Ji Tianqing did not give it a chance. He waved his hand and released a giant golden palm. He caught the pieces of bloodlight in his palm. Next, he activated the power of the heaven-patching orb and released a sacred white light that covered the pieces of bloodlight. Under the purification of the sacred white light, the pieces of bloodlight quickly melted like snow under the scorching sun. In just 10 breaths, all the pieces of bloodlight were purified and disappeared. Only the ugly demon-venomous insect with 3 heads was left. It was still struggling in the sacred white light, screaming in pain. However, after 100 breaths, the powerful 3-headed demon-venomous insect was also purified by the sacred white light. Everything was over. The Demon King Dust, who caused the disaster in Yuejian City, was killed. The 3 demon-venomous insect puppets that had evolved and become stronger were all killed by Ji Tianqing. The crisis in Yuejian City was temporarily resolved. Ji Tianqing put the white light back into the heaven-patching orb and rushed back to Yuejian City. 3 hours later, when he returned to the city lord's mansion, it was dawn again. The sky had just lit up. Yun Yao was still busy in the study. She was handling the migration of the people from the villages and towns to the city. Ji Tianqing came to the door of the study and signaled the guards to keep quiet. He wanted to sneak into the study and give Yun Yao a surprise. However, just as he entered the study, Yun Yao was alerted. She put down the file in her hand and turned to look at Ji Tianqing. She asked, "Tianqing, you're here? You look travel-worn. Did you go out again last night?"
Yes.
Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "Chao Jingfeng and the other demon-venomous insect puppet have been killed by me. Other than that, there's also that Sand Demon King. I've killed him too." Chapter 865. Yun Yao knew Ji Tianqing very well and knew that he had the heaven-mending pearl, a divine item that was the nemesis of the demon race and demonic goo. But when she heard Ji Tianqing's words, she was still filled with shock and disbelief. "Tianqing, you destroyed 2 demonic venomous puppets in one night and even killed the Dust Sand Demon King? How is this possible? How did you do it?" Yun Yao looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze, her eyes filled with excitement and excitement. Ji Tianqing sat down beside her and told her everything that had happened. After Yun Yao finished listening, she became even more excited. She nodded her head in relief and said, "That's great. Tianqing, the hundreds of thousands of people in Yuejian City have been saved. Previously, we found out that the mastermind behind the demonic goo puppets and the disaster in Yuejian City was Demon King Dust. But Demon King Dust was too strong. We couldn't catch him even if we tried our best. We couldn't even deal with Chao Jingfeng and the 2 demonic goo puppets. Now, you've only been in Yuejian City for 2 days and you've already dealt with all the culprits. It's not only my fortune that you came to Yuejian City to help me, it's also Yuejian City's fortune. If it weren't for your help, I would never have been able to solve Yuejian City's crisis. Who knows how many people in Yuejian City would have been killed?" Ji Tianqing held her hand and said with a smile, I'm here to share your burden. Now that Yuejian City's crisis has been resolved, there's only some finishing work left. You don't have to work so hard. After you rest for 2 days, we'll leave. Yun Yao quickly nodded and said, when Yuejian City's situation stabilizes, we'll return to Monarch Mansion to report the news. Divine Master He, you will be very happy.
Tianqing, you've done such a great service this time.
Divine Master He, you will definitely reward you handsomely. When she mentioned Monarch Mansion and Divine Master He Yu, a strange look flashed across Ji Tianqing's eyes, but he didn't say anything else. At this moment, a guard's report came from outside the study. Reporting to Miss Yun, Lord Yi requests an audience. Yun Yao turned to look at the door and said sternly, "Let him in." A moment later, City Lord Yi walked into the study anxiously. He held an urgent secret report in his hands and entered the study. With a face full of worry, he reported, "Miss Yun, something bad has happened. Last night, more demonic goo puppets came out to cause trouble, and 3 of them appeared at once. Those 3 devil-venomous puppets attacked Linya village, which is 150 kilometers north of the city. They killed hundreds of villagers and even set fire to the village." Lord Yi anxiously reported. Halfway through, he found that Ji Tianqing was also in the study. Moreover, Yun Yao was looking at him and waving her hand to signal him to stop. Lord Yi hurriedly stopped, bowed to Ji Tianqing, and said to Yun Yao, "Miss Yun, why don't we go to Linya village to have a look?" Yun Yao's expression was a little playful. She shook her head and said, "No need. Just send someone to clean up the mess. About what happened last night, young Master Ji has already told me. Last night, when the demonic goo puppets attacked Linya village, young Master Ji arrived in time and killed the 3 demonic goo puppets. Moreover, young Master Ji followed the clues and found Chao Jingfeng and the Demon King of Dust, and killed them both. Now that the Demon King of Dust and the 3 demonic goo puppets have been eliminated by young Master Ji, Yuejian City's crisis has been resolved. You only need to deal with the aftermath." When Yun Yao finished speaking, City Lord Ye's eyes widened in shock. He was petrified on the spot. He stared at Ji Tianqing, dumbfounded. The secret report in his hand fell to the ground without him noticing. He was stunned. After a long while, he came back to his senses. His face was flushed with excitement, and he was so excited that he could not speak coherently. "Young Master Ji, you are a god sent by the heavens to save Yuejian City. This is unbelievable. Our Yuejian City did our best to investigate, but we did not even find the shadow of the Demon King of Dust. You have only been in Yuejian City for 2 days, and you have eliminated the Demon King of Dust and the 3 demonic goo puppets. This is a miracle. No wonder you are called the #1 genius of our clan. To be able to become the Honorable Tianqian Region Lord, you are really unparalleled." City Lord Yi was so excited that his entire body was trembling. His blood was rushing through his veins. He did not care about his status as the city lord. With a plop, he knelt in front of Ji Tianqing and kowtowed with a sincere expression. "Young Master Ji, on behalf of the 820,000 citizens of Yuejian City, I thank you for saving us. Please accept my kowtow." Ji Tianqing smiled and extended his hand, wanting to help City Lord Yi up. However, City Lord Yi did not get up. He insisted on kneeling on the ground and kowtowing with sincerity. He was truly grateful to Ji Tianqing. Not to mention 3 kowtows. Even 300 kowtows were not enough. After all, without Ji Tianqing's help, he would not have been able to solve the crisis of Yuejian City. If the Demon King of Dust and demonic goo were allowed to sow, the entire Yuejian City would be destroyed and hundreds of thousands of citizens would be harmed. His position as the city lord would only exist in name, and he might even lose his life. After City Lord Yi bowed, Ji Tianqing reminded him earnestly, "City Lord Yi, although the crisis of Yuejian City has been resolved, you cannot let your guard down. You must follow young Lady Yun's orders and continue to guard the city. You must not let any new demons enter the city and cause trouble. Don't worry, the Imperial Residence and the Imperial Court will solve the problem of the demonic goo sooner or later. Only then can Yuejian City relax." City Lord Yi quickly patted his chest and promised, his tone solemn, "Young Master Ji, don't worry. This subordinate will remember young Lady Yun's orders and protect Yuejian City with my life." To be able to receive young Master Ji's help, This subordinate is truly fortunate. In the future, if young Master Ji has any use for this subordinate, please do not hesitate to order me. This subordinate will definitely do as you say and sacrifice my life for you. Obviously, after this incident, City Lord Yi had become Ji Tianqing's loyal follower. It was no exaggeration to say that even if Ji Tianqing asked him to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire, he would not hesitate. Ji Tianqing's ability, martial prowess, and bearing had completely conquered him. A moment later, City Lord Yi exited the study, full of excitement. He carried out the orders and arranged the aftermath. At dawn, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao returned to their rooms to rest. For the next 2 days, the two of them remained in the city lord's residence. While recuperating, they also made a series of arrangements for the future defense of Yuejian City. It was not until the morning of the 3rd day that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left the city lord's residence. They left Yuejian City under the auspices of City Lord Yi and countless citizens. After the two of them left Yuejian City, they flew into the sky as fast as lightning and returned in the direction of Zhongzhou City. On the way back, the two of them passed by several cities and saw that they were all in a miserable state. The people were suffering because of the demonic goo.
Chapter 866.
2 days later, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao returned to Central State City. After they returned to the monarch residence, they went straight to the Black Feather Palace to report the news to God Teacher Black Feather.
Ji Tianqing was a little emotional.
He thought about how he had barged into the buried Star Sea and what God Teacher Black Feather had said. However, although he was feeling complicated, he wasn't nervous. He was magnanimous as usual. He walked into the Black Feather Palace with Yun Yao and stepped into the main hall. In the cold and simple main hall, there was a black-robed man with a thin and dignified face sitting upright.
He was God Teacher Black Feather. God Teacher Black Feather was meditating with his eyes closed.
He seemed to be thinking about something important as his brows were filled with worry. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood 10 steps away from God Teacher Black Feather and bowed in unison. Crown Prince Yun Yao greets God Teacher Black Feather.
Ji Tianqing greets God Teacher Black Feather.
God Teacher Black Feather opened his eyes and looked at the two of them with a dignified gaze.
He didn't look at Yun Yao.
Instead, he stared at Ji Tianqing and asked calmly, "Ji Tianqing, are you here to bid farewell or to ask for forgiveness?"
Hearing this, Yun Yao's heart was filled with doubts. She immediately frowned.
Ji Tianqing had already expected God Teacher Black Feather to have such a reaction. He wasn't surprised. He said expressionlessly, "God Teacher Black Feather, I'm not here to bid farewell or ask for forgiveness.
I'm here to report the news to you."
God Teacher Black Feather frowned slightly and said with a solemn expression, "I've ordered all the crown princes to go to the various cities to deal with the devil race.
However, you're not included in these crown princes. Even if I'm here to report the news, it should be Yun Yao. What does it have to do with you?"
The monarch residence has its own rules. You violated the monarch residence's rules and barged into the buried Star Sea.
That's an unforgivable crime.
I didn't pursue your crime back then, but that doesn't mean you're exempt from punishment. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a playful smile, "That's right.
You're right.
However, I suggest that you listen to Yun Yao's report before you decide how to punish me." God Sage Black Feather frowned as he looked at him. He suddenly felt that this brat was a little strange today.
It seemed like the situation was not good. What is this brat relying on? How can he be so fearless?
Did he guess that I wouldn't chase him out just because he had Kenshin blood in his veins? This thought flashed through God Mentor Black Feather's mind. He decided to ignore him for now and listen to Yun Yao's report first. "Yun Yao, I sent you to Yuejian City to preside over the situation.
How is the situation in Yuejian City now? What are the casualties?"
Yun Yao replied in detail, reporting to Divine Master, "Before the Crown Prince took charge of Yuejian City, the city was in a state of chaos and was in a precarious situation. A total of 18,000 people were killed. In the half a month that the Crown Prince took charge of Yuejian City, the situation in the city gradually stabilized. The number of people killed was also reduced to about 5,000. God Mentor Black Feather revealed a gratified and satisfied expression. He nodded and said, "Yes, Yun Yao, you did well. It can be seen that you must have put in a lot of effort and have done well. In the past few days, I have received news from the various crown princes every day. The situation in most of the cities is more serious than Yuejian City. Tens of thousands of people have died because of the demonic goo chaos. There are even a few cities that are in the worst situation. The number of casualties has reached 100,000. All the villages and towns outside the city have been destroyed. God Mentor Blackfeather's tone was very heavy when he talked about the situation in the other cities. His expression was also full of worry. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could not see the specific situation in the other cities. However, they also felt miserable when they heard the numbers. Their hearts were heavy because of it. God Mentor Blackfeather sighed heavily and continued to ask, Yun Yao, although the situation in Yuejian City has stabilized, you can't let your guard down. Later, you will return to Yuejian City and continue to work hard. You must hold on. Without waiting for him to finish, Yun Yao could not help but report, God Mentor, the crisis in Yuejian City has been resolved. There is no need for the Crown Prince to continue to stay in Yuejian City.
What?
God Mentor Blackfeather was stunned for a moment. He frowned in confusion and asked, What crisis has been resolved? Yun Yao, you must not underestimate the methods of the devil race. I have received news in the past few days that the demonic goo will evolve and become stronger after devouring enough flesh and souls. Furthermore, the demonic goo puppets will develop intelligence and become cunning. Their vitality is also extremely tenacious, almost equivalent to an immortal body. Yun Yao smiled and nodded. God Mentor, what you have said is also the news that I want to report to you. There are a total of 3 evolved demonic goo puppets in Yuejian City. There is also a demon king who is secretly planting demonic goo. However, that demon king and the 3 demonic goo puppets have all been killed by Tianxing. How is that possible? God Mentor Blackfeather's face was filled with shock and disbelief. Yun Yao saw that he still did not believe her, so she told him everything that had happened. After she finished, God Mentor Blackfeather could not sit still anymore. He was rather excited and excited. Yun Yao, Ji Tianxing has only been in Yuejian City for 2 days and he has already found the 3 demonic goo puppets hiding outside the city. He even found the Demon King hiding in the mountains? That's right. Yun Yao nodded quickly and said with certainty, If Tianxing had not helped me, I would not have been able to do anything. With my strength, I would not have been able to find the Dust Sand Demon King and the 3 demonic goo puppets, let alone defeat them. God Mentor Blackfeather's expression became more and more interesting. His eyes shone brightly as he stared at Ji Tianxing with a faint smile. Ji Tianxing, you brat. No wonder you are so fearless and do not care about my punishment. So that's why. God Mentor Blackfeather thought to himself. He felt angry and amused at the same time. However, as the Grand God Mentor of the Imperial Residence, he had always been dignified and noble. He was as cold as an ice mountain. He would not say such things out loud. He stared at Ji Tianxing and asked in a dignified tone, Ji Tianxing, how did you find the Demon King and the 3 demonic goo puppets? Ji Tianxing smiled humbly and said calmly, Master, let's not talk about this for now. You should first announce how you are going to punish me. After all, I have broken the rules of the Imperial Residence and entered the Buried Star Sea without permission. This is an unforgivable crime. I cannot be exempted from it. He repeated what God Mentor Blackfeather had said and returned it to him without changing a word. God Mentor Blackfeather did not know whether to laugh or cry. He was so angry that he raised his eyebrows and said with a darkened face, Ji Tianxing, are you trying to blackmail this lord? You are the Imperial Prince of the Imperial Residence, the #1 genius of the human race. You have countless honors. How great is your future? How can you be so narrow-minded? Can't you be more magnanimous? Those who achieve great things should not be bothered by trifles. They should focus on the big picture. Chapter 867. Ji Tianxing quietly listened to Divine Master Blackfeather's words and acted as if he was being taught humbly. After God Teacher Heiyu finished speaking, he asked innocently, God Teacher Heiyu, I understand what you said. However, you still haven't answered me. How are you going to punish me? God Teacher Heiyu was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Zhang Yi. He couldn't help but ask, You brat! Did you turn a deaf ear to what I said just now? Tell me honestly, are you still holding a grudge against me for slapping you? When Ji Tianxing first arrived in Zhongzhou, He was eager to meet Yun Yao. Hence, he rushed into the monarch residence. At that time, he was discovered by God teacher He Yu. He was slapped by God teacher He Yu and was injured. Of course, Ji Tianxing remembered this incident. He hadn't forgotten about it until now. However, he couldn't blame God teacher He Yu for that incident. He could only blame himself for not knowing the rules. After entering the monarch residence, he understood God teacher He Yu's temperament. He knew that God teacher He Yu was a just and strict person. Hence, he wouldn't hold a grudge. Now that he heard God teacher He Yu mention this incident, he shook his head and smiled. God teacher, you misunderstood. Why would I hold a grudge? Do I look like that kind of person? God teacher He Yu frowned and looked at him. He nodded seriously. Yes. Ji Tianxing was helpless. He wanted to roll his eyes at God teacher He Yu. Seeing Jiang Yi's depressed expression, God teacher He Yu actually revealed a teasing smile for the first time. Whether it was Ji Tianxing or Yun Yao, it was the first time they saw him smile. Both of them couldn't believe that God teacher He Yu, who was always cold and dignified, could actually smile. Yun Yao watched quietly from the side. She watched Ji Tianxing and God teacher He Yu bicker. She sighed in her heart. I didn't expect that Tianxing would be able to bargain with God teacher He Yu, who is as cold as an ice mountain, and bicker with him like a friend. Even if they told others about what had just happened, no one would believe it. Tianxing, oh Tianxing, just what kind of charm do you have to make countless geniuses and experts favor you? At this moment, God Master Blackfeather quickly withdrew his smile and resumed his cold and dignified expression. Then he announced in a solemn tone, Ji Tianxing, although you trespassed into the Star Burial Sea without permission and violated the rules of this sovereign palace, the sovereign palace still has its own rules. However, considering that you had a reason for this incident and that you risked your life to save your father out of filial piety, I will not pursue your responsibility any further. Furthermore, you have saved hundreds of thousands of people in Yuejian City and have made a great contribution. This seat will not punish a meritorious subject. I declare that the matter of you trespassing into the Star Burial Sea has been settled. After he solemnly announced the result, Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and bowed. He said sincerely, Thank you for your magnanimity, Divine Master. Prince Ji Tianxing is deeply grateful. Yes. God Master Blackfeather nodded with satisfaction and quickly asked, Now, tell this seat how you found the demonic parasite puppet and eliminated the demonic parasite. Ji Tianxing knew that God Master Blackfeather was a great expert at the 9th level of the spirit refinement realm. There were many things that could not be hidden from him. Therefore he answered truthfully, I won't hide it from Divine Master Blackfeather. In the Star Burial Sea, I went through countless dangers and finally found a divine treasure. It was that divine treasure that saved my father's life and made me the nemesis of the devil race. Not only can I see through the disguise of the devil race, but I can also sense the aura of the demonic parasite puppet and purify the demonic parasite and demonic chi. A divine treasure that was lost in the Star Burial Sea and buried for thousands of years was actually found by you. God Master Blackfeather's eyes surged with radiance and his heart was in turmoil. I see. No wonder you only used 2 days to resolve the crisis of Yuejian City. The nemesis of the devil race. What a great nemesis of the devil race. Ji Tianxing, you have indeed brought this seat a pleasant surprise. Ji Tianxing only smiled and nodded. He was not arrogant or impetuous. Of course, there was no need for him to be humble. God Master Blackfeather looked at him with shining eyes and said earnestly, Since you are the nemesis of the devil race and have such extraordinary abilities, then things will be easy to handle. This seat hopes that you can take on the task of saving the 100 cities of Central State and the people of Central State. As the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. This seat hopes that you can represent the monarch mansion and go to the various cities to help the princes and city lords completely resolve the demonic parasite rebellion. He had high hopes for Ji Tianxing. After he finished speaking, he looked at Ji Tianxing with a face full of expectation. However, Ji Tianxing shook his head and rejected his request. Divine Master Blackfeather, it is not that I am not willing to serve the monarch mansion, nor is it that I do not want to save the 100 cities of Central State. However, this is not a long-term plan, and it is impossible to truly resolve the demonic parasite rebellion. Every time I go to a city, it will take me at least 10 days to half a month. If I were to clear the demonic parasites in the 100 cities, it would take at least a few years. In a few more years, most of the cities would have fallen and been destroyed by the demonic parasite rebellion. God Master Blackfeather was stunned. He frowned with a serious expression and nodded. Yes, you are right.
This seat was too excited and did not consider properly. You alone will not be able to deal with the demonic parasite rebellion in Central State in a short period of time. Tianqing, with your understanding of the devil race and the demonic parasite rebellion, do you have any ideas and plans? Tianqing already had a plan in his heart.
He said without hesitation, Divine Master Blackfeather, I have already considered this matter and have a rough idea.
The demonic parasite rebellion is just a type of parasite that can devour flesh and souls to increase its strength. This is nothing, but it is impossible for it to have intelligence. However, when I was dealing with the 3 evolved demonic parasite puppets, I realized that their intelligence and thinking are basically no different from normal people. They are very cunning. Therefore, I am sure that someone is controlling the demonic parasite puppets to make those evolved puppets so difficult to deal with. Hearing this, God Master Blackfeather nodded in agreement. That's right. This seat has also considered this problem before. Tianqing, continue. Tianqing continued. The ancient demon emperor is far away in the northern desert. It is almost impossible for him to control tens of thousands of demonic parasites. The masterminds behind the demonic parasite rebellion are the 2 demon marshals. Therefore, I suspect that the people secretly controlling the demonic parasites are also the 2 demon marshals. As the saying goes, to catch bandits, catch the ringleader first. If we want to completely resolve the demonic parasite rebellion, we have to find the root of the problem and start with the 2 demon marshals. God Master Blackfeather nodded slightly and said with a serious expression, The 2 demon marshals came to Central State to be in charge of the demonic parasite rebellion. They are very dangerous and indeed have to be eliminated as soon as possible. However, with their insignificant strength, it is impossible for them to control tens of thousands of demonic parasites in the hundreds of cities in Central State with just magic. If this seed is not wrong, they must have a powerful magic treasure of the Devil Dao and are using it to control the demonic parasites. Chapter 868. Tianqing and Yun Yao had never thought of the conjecture that God Master He Yu had raised. The 2 of them thought for a while and nodded in agreement as they felt that it made sense. Tianqing said seriously, 20 days ago, 2 demon commanders kidnapped my father. They wanted to use my father as a hostage to force me to submit to them. I have fought with the 2 demon commanders before. I have some understanding of their strength and methods. One of them is called Tu Ren. He is the weakest of the 6 demon commanders. He is only a LV1 soul cultivation stage cultivator. He is not a threat at all. However, the other one, Xueqi, is a LV3 or LV4 soul cultivation stage cultivator. He is a vicious and treacherous person. If they have a demon Dao magical treasure, it must be in Xueqi's hands. Unfortunately, I am still no match for Xueqi. There is no way I can kill him. Although he had reached LV8 Sky Origin stage, he was still no match for Xueqi. Unless he had the help of Burial of Heaven's soul avatar, he could only exchange a few blows with Xueqi. Unfortunately, Burial of Heaven had been in a deep slumber and could not help at all. God Master He Yu thought for a while and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He sneered and said, Leave that Xueqi to me. Previously, I had to stay in the Monarch Mansion to take care of the Monarch Mansion and the Central State. I could not deal with the 2 demon commanders personally. Since the root cause of the demonic goose chaos is likely to be the 2 demon marshals, then this seat will personally take action and settle them with lightning speed. Tianqing and Yun Yao were excited when they heard that God Master He Yu was going to deal with them. They were looking forward to it. That's great. As long as God Master He Yu is willing to deal with them, the 2 demon commanders are no match for you. Rumor has it that God Master He Yu has reached the half-step primordial soul stage. You are invincible among those below the primordial soul stage. If you are going to deal with them personally, we will be able to feast our eyes on your peerless demeanor. Divine Master He Yu looked at Tianqing and said calmly, Although your words sound like you're trying to flatter him, you're basically right. As long as I can find the 2 demon marshals, they will definitely die. But the crux of the problem was that the 2 demon marshals were very cunning. They knew the Emperor Manor's power and methods, so they didn't have any direct contact with the Emperor Manor. They're hiding in the dark, and through their spies all over the cities, they're clearly aware of our movements. If I were to search for them,
They would definitely flee at the mere sight of me. To God-tier Master He Yu, not being able to find the two demon commanders was the biggest headache. If the two demon marshals dared to fight him head-on, they would die without a doubt. There would be no possibility of escape.
Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows.
An idea popped into his mind, and he immediately had an idea. Divine Master Blackfeather, I have an idea that will definitely lure the two demon marshals out.
Divine Teacher He Yu and Yun Yao were shocked. They looked at him with anticipation. What idea? Hurry up and tell me.
Ji Tianqing revealed a mocking cold smile, and said in a playful tone, the two demon marshals came to Central State under the orders of the Demon Emperor. Other than carrying out the demonic goo plan, they also want to capture me and bring me back to the northern desert demon nest. They have spies all over Central State City, so they might already know that I've returned to Central State. Since that's the case, then I'll act as bait and lure the two demon marshals out. Sir God-tier Master, follow me in the dark. When the two demon marshals appear, we can capture them all in one go. God-tier Master Blackfeather considered for a moment, then nodded and said, this is a good idea, we can give it a try. I won't follow you in the dark, so as to avoid leaving any traces and letting them know. To be safe, I'll hide in your domain lord's golden seal, so they won't be able to detect me. Ji Tianqing stared blankly for a moment, then revealed a face full of smiles. He said with heartfelt admiration, God-tier Master Blackfeather, you're truly sinister.
Cough cough. God-tier Master Blackfeather pretended to cough.
His expression didn't change as he said in a serious manner, this isn't sinister, this is called wisdom.
Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao both revealed smiles. In the evening, the setting sun shone down. Central State City was peaceful and auspicious. It could be considered peaceful recently. However, there were grievous news coming from Central State City every day, causing the citizens to feel depressed, filled with worry. In the depths of the divine steel forest, at the entrance of the Monarch Manor, a light suddenly flashed, and a figure appeared. This person was wearing a white robe, handsome and heroic, in high spirits. It was Ji Tianqing.
He left the Monarch Manor alone and flew into the sky as fast as lightning, flying towards the South City Gate. Only he and God-tier Master Blackfeather participated in the plan to kill the demon marshals. Yun Yao's current strength was too weak, so it wasn't suitable for her to participate. Not only could she not help, it was easy for accidents to happen. Therefore, Yun Yao stayed in the Monarch Manor, silently waiting for news. As for God-tier Master Blackfeather, he had already hidden in the treasure space inside the seal of mountains and rivers, meditating and resting, waiting for his prey to take the bait. Ji Tianqing flew over Central State City's sky, quickly leaving the South City Gate, flying towards the South Mountain Range. On the surface, it looked like he was in a hurry. His brows filled with anxiety, as if he had some urgent matter to attend to in the south. When he left Central State City, there were several spies of the demon race in the city, secretly using a secret technique, sending out secret messages. And all of this, although Ji Tianqing didn't see it, it was all within his expectations.
Very quickly, 2 hours passed.
The curtain of night had already fallen. Ji Tianqing was more than 800 li away from Central State City, speeding through the night sky. He seemed to be focused on hurrying, but in fact, he was secretly releasing his spiritual sense to investigate the surrounding movements. Unknowingly, another 4 hours passed. It was late at night, the stars in the sky were sparse, the starlight somewhat dim. At this time, Ji Tianqing was flying in a vast and majestic mountain range. This place was very desolate. Within a radius of 500 li, there wasn't a single city. Suddenly, in the night sky in front of him, 2 dark red bloodlights lit up, cutting through the night sky as fast as lightning. The 2 dark red beams of light were extremely fast. They were heading straight for Ji Tianqing, and the distance between them and him was rapidly closing. Ji Tianqing immediately sensed that something was wrong, hurriedly slowing down his flying speed, looking at those 2 bloodlights with a heart full of vigilance. After a short 10 breaths, those 2 bloodlights sped over, stopping in the night sky 1,000 meters in front of him. Swish swish. After the bloodlights faded, 2 tall and sturdy figures appeared. The 2 newcomers were tall and sturdy demon race experts. Their appearances and auras were extremely ferocious. The demon race expert on the left had a head of purple hair, wore a purple robe, and wore a necklace of skulls around his neck. He was one of the 2 demon marshals, the strongest one, Marshal Xueqi. The demon race expert beside Marshal Xueqi had strangely long arms. His body was like a large ape, and he wore a scarlet cloak. His upper body was bare, his feet were bare, and there was only a flood dragon leather skirt around his waist, his entire body emitting a ferocious aura. He was the 6th-ranked demon marshal, Tu Ren. The 2 demon marshals coldly stared at Ji Tianqing, their mouths revealing a cold grin.
Chapter 869. Xueqi and Tu Ren's tone was full of mockery. They were confident that they would win. The 2 of them separated and surrounded Ji Tianqing. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing saw the 2 demon marshals appear out of nowhere. He did not panic at all. He even sneered and said mockingly, "You have a lot of spies. You know I left the city so soon." Tu Ren sneered, "Haha, you idiot. Don't you think it's too late for you to realize it now?" Ji Tianqing looked at him from the corner of his eyes and curled his lips in disdain. "Tu Ren, it seems like you've forgotten the pain after your wounds have healed. Have you forgotten the lesson from last time?" At the mention of what happened last time, Tu Ren immediately recalled his miserable appearance when he was seriously injured. He was instantly filled with rage and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Ji Tianqing, you damn bastard. Don't be so proud. Ben Shuai will never forget what happened last time. You walked right into my trap tonight. How dare you leave the city to die? Ben Shuai will cut you into pieces and kill you." Ji Tianqing was not angry. Instead, he sneered even more. He even looked at Tu Ren with pity. "Tisk. Tsk. Tsk. You idiot. You don't even know you are about to die. How pitiful." Tu Ren was enraged by the humiliation. His eyes were blazing with flames as he growled in a low voice. "Ji Tianqing, you are looking for death. If Ben Shuai doesn't cut you into pieces." Before he could finish, Xueqi's expression changed, and he shouted in a gloomy tone, "Ji Tianqing, last time, you were severely injured by Ben Shuai. You ran away like a stray dog. Now you dare to talk nonsense to Ben Shuai. Do you have something to rely on? It has only been half a month since we last met. You have reached level 8 of Sky Origin stage. You are indeed a monster. No wonder the Demon King thinks highly of you. However, with your meager strength, you'll still die tonight." Xueqi was not as easily angered as Tu Ren, nor would he be blinded and lose his rationality. Seeing Ji Tianqing's fearless attitude, Xueqi guessed that he must have something to rely on. However, Xueqi only guessed part of the reason and could not guess the real reason. Ji Tianqing looked at Xueqi and sneered, "Xueqi, you are smart enough, unlike Tu Ren who is so pitiful and stupid. Unfortunately, it's too late for you to understand this now. Tonight the ones who will die are you." As soon as he finished speaking, he summoned his Dharma treasure, the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. The Seal of Mountains and Rivers appeared out of thin air, floating in the night sky in front of him, shining with a dazzling golden light. Shwa! After the Seal of Mountains and Rivers was opened, a figure as cold as an iceberg with a majestic aura appeared in the night sky. This was a black-robed expert with a mysterious and powerful aura. He was Divine Teacher Yu. As soon as he appeared, Xueqi and Tu Ren sensed an extremely strong sense of danger, and their faces immediately changed. Both of them stared at Divine Teacher Yu, their pupils constricted, and their expressions turned solemn. "Who are you? It seems that Ji Tianqing is relying on you?" Divine Teacher Yu looked at the 2 demon marshals indifferently and uttered these 5 words coldly. "The Imperial Residence. Yu." These 5 words were like a bolt from the blue, causing the 2 demon marshals' faces to change drastically. Their bodies froze on the spot. Both of them widened their eyes, revealing a fearful expression. There was even a flash of fear in their eyes. "Yu? You are Divine Teacher Yu from the Imperial Residence? You are the Grand Divine Teacher from the Imperial Residence? The Yu who is invincible under the Immortal Soul stage?" Xueqi and Tu Ren panicked and looked at Yu cautiously. They secretly gathered their strength and were ready to turn and run at any time. They had done their homework before coming to the central region. They had a good understanding of the experts from all the major forces. Especially the Imperial Residence,
which made them extremely fearful. Before coming to the central region, the Demon King had solemnly warned them not to confront the divine teacher from the imperial residence.
Otherwise, they would definitely die. Now, the grand divine teacher from the imperial residence was standing in front of them. How could they not be shocked? How could they not be fearful? Tu Ren's face was extremely ugly. His heart was filled with fear and retreating. He only wanted to turn and run immediately. Xueqi was still calm and steady. He looked at divine teacher Heyu seriously and sneered. Hee. So this is your trick to lure us out.
Ben Shuai did not expect the grand divine teacher from the imperial residence to be so sinister and despicable.
In order to ambush Ben Shuai, you actually hid in Ji Tianqing's magic treasure.
You have really disgraced the imperial residence.
Divine teacher Heyu was not angry.
He looked at Xueqi indifferently as if he was looking at a dead man.
If I kill you, no one will know what happened tonight. What is there to be disgraced about? Xueqi was speechless.
His heart was filled with anger. He shouted with a cold face. Heyu, the imperial residence has never interfered in worldly affairs.
Why do you ignore your status and come personally?
As long as you let us go, Ben Shuai swears in the name of the Demon King that I will immediately evacuate the demon tribe from the central region city.
I will never be an enemy of the imperial residence in the future. Xueqi had obviously admitted defeat and was pleading with divine teacher Heyu.
However, divine teacher Heyu looked at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, Say no more.
Since I am here, you must die. Not to mention you, even if the ancient Demon King came personally, he would not be qualified to negotiate with the imperial residence.
As he finished speaking, he slowly raised his arms. His body surged with white divine soul light and 9 blazing divine soul dharma eyes appeared behind him. The 9 divine soul dharma eyes shone with dazzling white light and formed a circle. They were like 9 stars that slowly rotated and emitted a mysterious and vast aura.
At this moment, Heyu seemed to be one with the heavens and earth.
He controlled the heavens and earth.
Xueqi and Tu Ren saw that he was about to attack. Their expressions changed and they did not dare to talk nonsense. They turned and ran without hesitation.
Swoosh, swoosh.
Both of them turned into dark red bloodlight and exploded with their fastest speed. They were like lightning streaking across the night sky as they fled into the distance. However, divine teacher Heyu stood in the night sky with a cold expression.
His black robe fluttered as he shouted, You want to run now?
It's too late. Black feathers cover the sky. As he shouted, the 9 divine soul dharma eyes immediately released endless white divine soul light that spread in all directions.
Swoosh.
The white divine soul light turned into a blazing white light curtain that covered the sky and covered a radius of 100 miles in the blink of an eye.
This area was sealed by the blazing white light curtain and turned into divine teacher Heiyu's divine soul territory.
In this territory, he was the ruler of heaven and earth. He was an invincible existence.
Xueqi and Tu Ren had just escaped 20 miles away when they saw the divine soul territory formed.
Their eyes were filled with despair.
It's over. We can't escape. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.